Hey everybody, hope everybody's having a fantastic day. Originally I had a bunch, I didn't really know what to cover this morning, honestly. Had a bunch of different stuff on the go. Wasn't super stoked or excited about today. And then things started to happen and started to kind of figure out more of what we can be talking about today. And this is happening just, but we're like, what, 12 minutes behind the live feed on this one. So we're going to start right now with Pierre Poilievre's current announcement he's giving right now in Vancouver. Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Angry Canadian, the Grime family. And good morning, my 2 cents. Nice to see you, buddy. Welcome back. And good morning, Meatball Auditor. Nice. I love the name. Welcome to the stream. Nice to see a new face first thing in the morning. So, yeah, anyways, we're going to get right to this. We'll start with the Pierre Poilievre current press conference going on right now in Vancouver. All right.
Pour contrer la fentanyl. Imaginez, synthétise les drogues Falkland en Colombie-Britannique. Une vidéo qui souffre de la le libre-échange for Canada. Brandon.
So we're 10 minutes behind the actual English part of his press conference. Good morning, Hurricane.
Notre pays et notre économie. C'est comme ça qu'on va mettre le Canada d'abord. Merci beaucoup. Imagine if the town of Brandon were to vanish, that its 50,000 people suddenly died. That is the size and scope of the fentanyl overdose crisis in the last 9 years of the Carney-Trudeau Liberals. A small, beautiful city like Brandon has vanished from our lives. Since 2016, 50,000 Canadians have died of overdoses to opioids, 9 in 10 of whom have died as a result of fentanyl. More Canadians have died of opioid overdoses in the last 9 years than died fighting for Canada in the Second World War. They are real people, brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, fathers, mothers, friends, and thousands more are still suffering. Countless of them are in homeless encampments, living in the hell of addiction and homelessness. It wasn't like this before Liberals radically liberalized drugs. We know what they did. They passed C5 to allow traffickers to serve their sentences in their living rooms. They eliminated mandatory prison time. They opened up our ports and our borders. 99% of the shipping containers that enter our country, 99% of those shipping containers come in without any inspection at all.
Morning, Luca. Morning, Rhonda.
After 9 years of the Carney-Trudeau Liberals. Super labs in Canada synthesize using precursor chemical ingredients that come into Canada from China and Mexico through our open border policy. But it's not happening. This is something that looks like an episode of Breaking Bad. But this is not happening in New Mexico in a TV drama. It is happening here in Canada. Real life, right now. In November of 2024, police dismantled what they described as the largest, most sophisticated illicit drug super lab in the country in Falkland, British Columbia. One of the accused was out of jail after earlier convictions. Police said they seized 54 kilograms of fentanyl. Now, that might not seem like a lot until you realize that it just takes 2 milligrams to kill a human being. That means there was enough finished fentanyl to kill 27 million people. Police found enough ingredients to make enough fentanyl to kill 95 million people. That's twice the population of Canada. Police also found 390 kilograms of methamphetamine, small explosives, ammunition, silencers, high-capacity magazines, body armor, $500,000 in cash, and 89 firearms, many of which were, quote, loaded and ready to be used. Days earlier, police discovered a super lab in Langley, BC, that they say was capable of producing multiple kilograms of fentanyl on a weekly basis. A Government of Canada report confirmed.
It's like some Breaking Bad stuff right there.
And I quote, seizures of Canada-sourced fentanyl in places like the U.S. and Australia suggest that the domestic production of fentanyl is likely exceeding the domestic demand, and that Canada is now a source and transit country for fentanyl to some markets. The number of seizures of fentanyl at the Canada-U.S. border more than tripled between 2023 and 2024, rising from 239,000 doses to 839 doses. How did this happen? Well, the Carney-Trudeau Liberals happened. They legalized fentanyl possession here in British Columbia in partnership with the local radical NDP BC government. They passed C5, which eliminated mandatory jail time and brought in house arrest, allowing fentanyl dealers to do their time in their living room while watching Netflix or playing Grand Theft Auto.
I love he's painted this picture of criminals playing GTA on the couch while serving time under house arrest. Like, he's not wrong, though. Like, they're getting off a little too easy, in my opinion, as well.
Falkland Super Lab that police discovered had ties to transnational criminal networks that span Mexico all the way to China. They are killing our people and many more in other countries, which is now endangering the trade with our closest ally. President Trump has threatened to tariff Canada because of what he says is lethal drug flows. But whether or not we agree with him should not matter. It should not take a foreign leader to get the Liberals to wake up to the drug crisis that they have caused here at home. It should have been enough that we lost 50,000 of our people. We should crack down on drugs, not to please President Trump, but to ensure that not one more mother has to bury her face in her hands on learning that her son died of an overdose in a back alley somewhere.
Honestly, I feel like if you live in BC of all places too, chances are you know someone or are related to someone who's been a victim of the opioid crisis. I myself, like I was talking to Saul one time and we couldn't count, like we need more hands to count all the people we know who have been dramatically affected, or they're not the same anymore, or they're just dead. Like there's so many just growing up in the, you know, the Vancouver area in BC that we know of. It's just, it's honestly pretty crazy when you think about it.
Stop drugs to save our people and put Canada first. It starts with locking up mass traffickers and manufacturers of this poison with penalties that fit the crime. But what is that crime? Let's call fentanyl trafficking what it is. Mass murder. Selling 40 milligrams of this poison is enough to kill 20 people. It's like spraying bullets into a crowd. You might not know who you're killing, but it's certain someone will die.
I'm not laughing at Perry here. I'm laughing at the chat here.
That's why I'm denouncing today, as part of my Canada First plan, that common sense conservatives will bring mandatory prison sentences. There will be life sentences for anyone caught trafficking, producing, or exporting over 40 milligrams of fentanyl. 40 milligrams is enough to kill 20 people.
Luca in the chat, do 911 calls count? Can't tell you how many get dispatched for that. Yeah, it's wild. And that's what I was talking about, these safe injection sites. I think they've like overall reduced 911 calls, but I don't know if they've actually reduced official overdoses or if they're just able to deal with it on hand now, like what the difference is. I wish they were keeping track of those numbers, but it doesn't seem like they are, especially in the Vancouver area. Justin in the chat, or Justin, just lost my brother-in-law 4 months ago to this problem. Yeah, it's wild, dude. Like I know like a huge chunk of the people I hung out with in high school, like 5 or 6 of them, and then there's people I grew up with. You know, just it's just crazy how many people were affected by this. And I have relatives too who are just, they're never going to be the same. They're just completely gone, unfortunately. Even if they recover, like they're never going to be who they were before the addiction. And that's what's so messed up about fentanyl and this whole crisis is like it's permanently like even if you're still there, it's almost like coming back from wartime. You're like a vegetable, you know what I mean? Like you're a PTSD victim who's basically got shell shock so bad they can't function properly. That's almost like what this is. It's got like a wartime effect on the people, I think.
Anyone who is involved in trafficking that amount of fentanyl will get a life sentence. We will lock them up and we will throw away the key. And 15 years for traffickers caught with between 20 milligrams and 40 milligrams will be the new mandatory sentence. The people we will lock away are not non-violent addicts. They are the victims. We will come to the rescue of victims and addicts. We will provide life-saving treatment. My message to anyone struggling with addiction today is have hope, hang on, help is on the way. My government will provide residential treatment.
Morning,
It
Autumn.
will take people off the streets, provide them with detox, recovery, counseling, group therapy, sweat lodges for First Nations victims, and help them get into housing, a job, and back to their families. We will bring our loved ones home drug-free. Nor are we talking about the small-time dealer on a street corner, though he too will be punished. Rather, my law will go after the fentanyl kingpins who kill thousands of people each year. We will treat them like the mass murderers they are. We will bring home the country we knew and loved. After 9 years of the Carney-Trudeau Liberals, everything is broken.
You know, just to throw Carney in there now. They are worried about Carney. Don't get me wrong. Like, you know, they see Carney as their biggest threat in this upcoming election for sure. Northwest Coast in the chat. My brother became addicted through opioid prescription. Luckily, his wife was a nurse and had a family come to the rescue to help detox. Well, that's awesome that he was able to get out of it and hopefully is the same person he was before. Because, you know, I think there is a point of return for sure, but there is this, like, I feel like you get to a point where they've had so many overdoses in situations where they just have like no oxygen to their brain that they've essentially got like horrible brain damage, right? Like that's happened to someone I knew. So because he had so many overdoses, he suffered permanent brain damage, right? And now he's like just not there quite at all. And it's kind of scary because, like, yeah, I didn't even, you know, I just ran into him one time with my wife and we were like, hadn't seen him in years. And I was just like, what the hell happened? Like, you know, I had seen him when he was just getting into this stuff when we were like younger. And I remember like being like, oh yeah, you guys are all nuts. I'm gonna leave. You know, I just stopped hanging out with that whole group of friends because, yeah, a lot of them just started getting into drugs. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And like, it was weird because we weren't like, you know, coming from rough backgrounds. Like some of us came from pretty, like one of my friends was in a medical school program. You know what I mean? Like we weren't like your average hoodlums. Like we're all pretty average kids. Maybe one or two of us had a bit of a, you know, rough upbringing, but like most of us are pretty normal. You know what I mean? Like we're just kind of like you ever watch that show, The In-Betweeners? Like that kind of reminds me of me and my friends when we were younger. So it's just wild, right? It's just wild that it affected everybody. It doesn't matter what family you come from. Doesn't matter. Oh, maybe you had a rough. Like it just happens to people, right? It's just a horrible thing that plagues like, you know, even back to the opium dens. Like this has been a problem in society for a long time. It's just now we're seeing this like super level steroid superhuman drugs that are just destroying people like crazy.
Costs have doubled. Food bank use has doubled. Gun crime has doubled. The national debt has doubled. All of this because Justin Trudeau was implementing the radical policies of carbon tax Carney. These policies have destroyed our working class, and now he threatens an even bigger carbon tax after a brief election pause, a tax that will drive hundreds of billions of dollars out of our country and continue the rising cost of living that the Carney Liberals have imposed over the last 9 years. The good news is, life was not like this before the Carney-Trudeau Liberals, and it won't be like this after they're gone. We're going to bring home the country we knew and loved. We're going to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. Most of all, we are going to put our country first. This will be a country where hard work pays off, where anyone from anywhere can do anything. That was the Canadian promise, and my purpose is to bring it home. Let's make this a country where anybody who works hard gets a powerful paycheck and pension that buys affordable food, gas, and homes in safe neighborhoods wrapped around the protective arms of strong borders under a proud flag for a united country, Canada. Let's bring it home.
Thank you.
And I'd like to acknowledge we have here Jesse Sahota. I said it in French already. Jesse is a police officer who has fought fentanyl and crime his whole life, a wrestling coach, and a jiu-jitsu black belt. We call him the Gentle Giant. But he's
just like a super cop. Guy's got like multiple black belts. He's like 6'5", What? This is like the head of their drug task force. This guy looks like a warrior. Jeez. Look how tall he is. He's standing on the ground off the stage. Look how tall he is. Like he's at like Poilievre's waist when Poilievre's on the stage. That's crazy.
We have Member of Parliament for Delta after the next election. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now take questions from the floor, starting with the breaker.
Hi, Bob Mackin with the Breaker.News. Good morning. You're here at the port, and you referenced 99% of containers do not get checked. And you've got your candidate here who is a police officer himself. There have been reports recently, one by Peter German, former head of the RCMP for Western Canada, who recommends restoring ports police to ports here on the West Coast and also East Coast. And the ports police used to have headquarters very close to here. The Chrétien Liberals shut it down. Will you bring back the ports police as the Canada Ports Police, or will you open up RCP detachments at ports? And also wanted to get your comment on what's going on with your nomination race in Steveston Richmond East, where Y. Young issued a statement last week downplaying the Hogue Commission report and blaming Kenny Chiu, the former MP there, who's also seeking the nomination, blaming him for causing rift in the community. He's fired back and says that she's lying about the contents of the Hogue Commission report, which actually did.
Yeah, and that's not the only claim. There's a lot of people claiming Hogue is lying.
That Chinese government actors did target the Conservatives in 2021.
But I don't know for sure, right? Like we don't want to get lost in the chaos of it all, but like let's just kind of like, keep an open mind and keep an eye on things. That's all I'm saying.
So first of all, obviously Conservatives have been victims of foreign interference. It's clear that Beijing wanted to keep Justin Trudeau in power. I have no doubt that they'll want Mark Carney to stay in power. Mark Carney has a background of shipping investment
and when he says this stuff, that that doesn't imply there's somehow assets to that nation. It's more of just like their policies, China will find more favorable over mine. That's basically what he's saying, right?
China and favoring foreign economies over the Canadian economy. We need a prime minister who will put Canada first. On the question of ports, you're quite right. Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney and the Liberals have destroyed our border security and our ports. After 9 years of the Carney-Trudeau Liberals, our ports are allowing 99% of shipping containers to enter our country with no inspection. And that's where the drug ingredients, the guns, the stolen cars come into our country or leave to support massive crime networks. I announced that I will eliminate 2,000 bureaucrats and replace them.
Yeah, no, I watched Moose's video. I thought he did a good job. I like Moose on the Loose. I've been following Moose on the Loose since he had like 20,000 subscribers. Like Moose on the Loose is one of the few Canadian content creators for politics I actually always liked. I always found him like kind of witty, and a little drier, so more of my taste for sure. But yeah, when he broke it down, I thought it was good video. Like I said, I'm keeping an open mind, keeping an eye on it, but until I haven't made my formal, like, I'm not going to place any bets yet. That's all I'm saying.
With 2,000 extra CBSA agents who will have the power to surveil our entire border. They will also have the ability to use new high-tech scanners that can peer right through the metal walls of shipping containers to spot drugs, guns, and stolen cars. We will also expand our border security across the entire border with surveillance towers, drones, helicopters. I've said the military should immediately go to the borders to block fentanyl traffickers and other lawbreakers. The radical Trudeau-Carney experiment with open borders and post-national globalism has not only divided and weakened our country's sense of identity, it has endangered our people. When I'm Prime Minister, that radical, borderless, globalist ideology pushed by the Trudeau-Carney Liberals will end, and we will have a Prime Minister that seals the border, protects our people, and puts Canada first.
En français.
Yeah, no, I've seen Northern Perspective's video as well. I watched it off stream. Like I said, I thought it was all great. Like I think it's like there's a real case here, but I just don't think anyone's ready to be convicted yet, so to speak, right? I think we just got to see how things unfold. I really hope it triggers a formal additional investigation. because I don't. At this point, I think there's definitely a lot of questions that need to be answered for people to have more faith in Hogue's report there.
Merci beaucoup. C'est clair que les conservateurs sont été des victimes de l'ingérence de l'étranger. Le gouvernement à Pékin a favorisé les libéraux pour deux
Standard.
Hi.
Canada d'abord. Merci.
Thank you. The next question.
You can tell he's sick.
Standard.
You're getting over a
Hi,
sickness.
Jared Yeager from the Western Standard. So the Liberals now appear to be taking the fentanyl trafficking more seriously with the announcement of a fentanyl czar. Do you think this move is purely performative, or do you think it'll actually have an impact? Also, do you think your plan will have support across the aisle?
Thank you for your question. Of course, it's performative. The Liberals would like you to believe that they now agree with Pierre Poilievre and the common sense conservatives on everything. You know, why is it that right before the election, they suddenly changed their mind? Well, because they're trying to, these lying Liberals are trying to trick Canadians into giving them a fourth term. They're not going to change. The only way you'll get a change is by electing a common sense conservative government that will put Canada first. I have been against the carbon tax all along. I've been against the capital gains tax increase all along. I've been against fentanyl and in favor of tough penalties and strong borders all along. The Liberals will try to trick you to think that into thinking that they now agree with Pierre Poilievre on everything. There is only one common sense conservative government. There is only one common sense Canada First party that can change the country. And I am the leader of that party. I will be the one to stop the fentanyl and bring home the country that we knew and love.
En français.
Les libéraux essaient de vous convaincre qu'ils sont.
Kingpin dealers proposed.
Thank you. The next question will be from the Globe and Mail.
Globe and Mail.
On the proposed legislation for life for kingpin dealers, what is your strategy for the notwithstanding clause? To use it at all? To use it
Say life for kingpin dealers?
preemptively? To see it play out through the courts?
What I am proposing today is not only allowed under the Charter, it is required by the Charter. Section 7 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees life, liberty, and security of the person. 50,000 people had their Section 7 right to life violated by the open borders, soft on crime, legal drugs policy of the Liberals. I will protect the charter rights of Canadians and their right to life, liberty, and the security of the person by locking up the mass murderers that bring these drugs in. This penalty that I propose is proportionate to the crime. If you kill dozens of people, you should go away for life. And that is what we will do.
Yeah. Like, why is that a crazy thing? Why is that so crazy these days?
I will lock up these fentanyl murderers and we will throw away the key. And I will do it not just to save lives, but to uphold the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
And I think that's a great angle to take, just to be like, yeah, it's not about, infringing on their freedoms. It's about how they're all infringing on everybody else's freedoms, right? And this is where the freedom of speech argument comes in about inciting violence and everything. It's about that line is once your rights infringe on others' rights, then you're no longer in the right, right?
Français.
But would you use 33 to insulate the law so it doesn't get bat down in court?
Oh, it won't. No, well, because the judge...
Kane in the chat, one of our members, does he know that murder is a specific crime with specific conditions? I don't know. You want to elaborate a little bit, Kane? Good morning, by the way.
are going to be obliged by Section 7. It's clear.
Northwest Coast, who's been kind of disagreeing with Poilievre as we've gone along here, him saying, my argument is it's just not as easy as he proposes. And I understand what you're saying, but I think he just has a plain way of communicating. And I think he knows it's not that simple. And I think he's just trying to communicate it this way to the people is how I take it. Take with what you will. If you want to think maybe I'm a little bit, making excuses for him here. However, I don't think I am, just based off what I've seen from following Poilievre now for almost 2 years. That's just what I would put my money on. He's planning on doing?
Clear that people have the right to life, liberty, and security of the person. So what I'm proposing is necessary to uphold the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And you do not have the right to go out and kill 20 or 30 people by spreading poison in the community. That is not a charter right. So the Liberals believe that mass fentanyl murderers who have taken 50,000 lives have the right to go free on the streets. That is how they interpret the Charter. Here's how I interpret the Charter. That law-abiding people have the right to expect that their children will not die in back alleys. That's the Charter right I will uphold. Next question.
En français.
Section 7 is the section in question. Merci pour la question.
Oh, I see what you're saying to him saying about that. Yeah, you know, you're right. But I guess if you had intent, I guess you'd have to prove the intent that they knew it was contaminated, I guess. Like, yeah, I guess that's a good point, is how would you prove the intent in that situation? Because, yeah, the intent is a huge part in our law system.
No.
I just know that from Law 12, honestly. I'm not a lawyer either, so take my opinion with what you will.
La proposition de peine à vie pour des trafiquants de mettre les familles canadiennes en action.
Of course, today, Canada, Parliament.
This will be the final question from True North.
True North here.
So, you've argued that Parliament should be recalled to address the tariff threat facing Canada, which is related to the fentanyl crisis that you've spoken about earlier today. But however, you're also calling for an election. Of course, dissolving Parliament would be required to have an election. How can we have both of these views simultaneously? And given the urgency of the situation and the looming tariff threats, would having an election and dissolving Parliament be a responsible or wise course of action at this time?
It would be not only responsible, it is the only responsible course of action. We have a Liberal government that has totally lost control of everything. The Trudeau-Carney government has lost control of spending, having doubled the debt, lost control of crime, having seen gun crime rise by 116%. They've lost control of the borders with thousands of illegal migrants, drugs, guns pouring in over our borders and threatening our people. They've lost control of the cost of living with rising taxes and a doubling of housing costs. And they have lost control of our national sovereignty by blocking pipelines, mines, LNG plants. The Carney-Trudeau Liberals have made us hopelessly dependent on the Americans. They've handed over our economic sovereignty to President Trump, who spots weakness. And now, what is a real estate mogul from the fiercest economic jungle in the world, New York City? What does he do when he spots weakness? He pounces. He pounces on the weakness that Carney-Trudeau Liberals have caused in this country. We cannot allow this weakness to continue. We need an axe the tax election to elect a new common sense conservative government that will secure our borders, stop the drugs, lock up the criminals, axe taxes, approve and greenlight massive resource projects, cut the bureaucracy, and bring home Canada's promise. And that promise is very simple. It is my purpose in politics. It is to make it so that anyone from anywhere can do anything, that hard work earns a powerful paycheck and pension, that buys affordable food, gas, and homes in safe neighborhoods within the protective arms of a strong border under a proud Canadian flag. Let's bring it home.
En français.
Morning, Great Dominion, and Adrian, and Robin, and Mr. G. Welcome back, everybody. Good morning, Angry, by the way. I don't know if I said that earlier.
Les libéraux de Carney et Trudeau à prendre le contrôle. On va reprendre le nôtre militaire.
Okay, so that's it for that broadcast there, guys. I'm gonna go to the intermission screen here. We're gonna get on to something else next. Yeah, no, it was I thought it was a pretty good speech. Like what did you guys think of that? Like, let me know in the chat in the comments here. What you guys thought of that? I thought it was a pretty well put speech, personally. Like I like Poilievre though, so maybe I'm a little biased. I know some people didn't quite agree with what he was saying and was saying he was being a little reductive. People were saying in the chat there throughout the press conference. Just give me a sec here. I had a video I wanted to watch. So yeah, Michelle Rempel put out another video. I thought it'd be interesting to watch that. It is conservative, so take with the way you want. Will.
Parliament must be recalled. The problems Canadians
Oh,
are
great. She
facing.
put music. Oh, this is just an ad. Okay, this isn't the video I want. This is the one I want.
I'm here today in Ottawa, and I should be in the House of Commons. I should be debating legislation. I should be speaking up for the people that I represent. You know, I'm so angry today because I represent 120,000 people, and we're in the middle of a national crisis, and the Liberals have locked Parliament. Like, just behind me there is the main entrance to West Block, where I'm supposed to be going in. I should be getting ready for question period, parliamentary committees, but I'm not, because the Liberals shut down Parliament because they're putting their own party and their political fortunes ahead of our democracy.
So let's read out the chat here a little bit. We need to know what foreign interferences insiders are. What is the position of the NDP and Bloc on recalling Parliament? I think everybody's the only thing that's preventing people from doing it. Like, I don't think the Bloc really, I think it's really up to the Conservatives, right? Are they going to vote non-confidence if they reconvene? I think that's the biggest thing. I don't know what the right answer is. I think we need to deal with these crises for sure. And I think the Liberals are never going to reconvene knowing a vote of non-confidence will happen immediately. But it's still to Jagmeet Singh too, right? Like, Jagmeet Singh needs to be on board with it, and he's already stated that he'd be willing to support them under a new leader until they solved these national crises. And that's where a lot of people were saying, well, maybe they're going to reconvene, install Mark Carney as leader, and potentially enact some kind of emergency measures and postpone the election even further, which I don't know for sure if that's going to happen. I think that'd be a pretty big stretch. But at the same time, I definitely think we're going to see this whole situation is just like, I don't know for sure if we're going to have an election anymore when Parliament reconvenes. I really don't. And I think that's kind of like what sucks, because we have to take Jagmeet Singh on his word. And like, what good is that, right? He rips it up 22 times in one press conference. Like, it's just, everything he says is just a big sideshow, right? He doesn't actually stand on anything, have any principles. So I have no idea which way he's going to flip or flop, right? So regardless what he says, I don't think it matters what he says at all. It's just, we have to wait till the moment comes to really get an answer, just because of how unpredictable Jagmeet Singh can. Well, I guess he's kind of predictable, but he goes and says he's going to do takes a grand stand on, hey, I'm going to rip this up. I'm going to stop supporting Trudeau. And then what does he do? He just goes and keeps supporting Trudeau. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just like, it's he's just spineless, right? He's just, I don't know what he's thinking. And I really hope that his career comes to an end, because I think he's got no loyalty to his party. He's got no loyalty to anyone, I think, but himself. So, you know, at least some people, you know, they can say that they're self-interested, but at least they have some party loyalty, right? Where it doesn't even seem like Jagmeet Singh really has that. It just seems like he wants to just, you know, he's just going with whatever way the wind blows. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, yeah, it's just ridiculous. So that's kind of where my answer to that Great Dominion. I don't really know for sure with like where the Bloc stands, and Jagmeet Singh. Doesn't matter what the hell he says, it's the same crap anyways, I think, at this point. Adrian in the chat, the king is absent, time for Republic. Yeah, I'm not really I'm getting a little nervous about everything Trump's doing lately. I think he's getting a little bit aggressive. I'm hoping his plan works out, but just the whole tariff thing itself was pretty crazy. And this whole act of like, oh, now Canada and Mexico are stepping it up. Like, apparently these deals were put on the table a while ago, and now he just like, and he refused them. And now he's just like accepting previous offers to end this situation. And I think it probably has to do with private corporate interest getting involved more than it does of whatever Canada did. I think it was the companies that rely or would be affected by those tariffs, the most, that were really probably complained to Trump about it, being like, what the hell are you doing? And now Trudeau's going to counter the tariffs. It's like, this is just going to like burn everything. Like, it's going to kill entire companies. It would kill thousands of jobs. Like, it would be pretty messy, especially with the automotive industry. So I don't know if he really thought that one through. So I think we got to keep an open mind and criticize everybody regardless of party affiliation or what tribe we think we're on. You know, we still have to be open to admitting, you know, you can say, oh, don't like he did this, this, and this, but I still think he's the better option. I think he's a better way to be about it than to pretend like there's nothing wrong with him. He's great. You're all a bunch of crazy left liberal lunatics. It's just like, that doesn't get to, that doesn't get your point across to anybody, right? And like, I'm personally conservative, and this is just my, my 2 cents on the whole thing since I started doing this channel. Thanks, Trump, for forcing our government to at least recognize some of the issues. That is the thing. It did light a fire under the liberals' butts. You know what I mean? But I don't think he thought that thing. But it worked. I think it benefited Canada in a sense, but I think it didn't really help his global relations and like a lot of these countries. It's not going to make people trust America more. Not like they don't have much of a choice, but Trump is demented. Great Dominion, who's also conservative, is saying this. Trump is demented, if you had any doubts, and look what he did yesterday. I haven't seen fully. Is this about the Gaza stuff? I know people were talking about it on a bunch of different streams yesterday. But anyways, we're going to get back to this video here.
Democracy and ahead of your voice and ahead of a national plan to address the major national crises that we're in. Even before the threat of American tariffs, any of you watching were having trouble buying groceries, affording rent. Many of you were having trouble with crime in your own communities. We're facing a major national crime wave. And for the Liberals, even at that point, to shut down Parliament for months in the middle of a national crisis was unconscionable. Like, I can't believe that this would have happened. But now, the Americans have put a 28-day pause on tariffs. You know where Parliament should be? In there, debating. The Conservatives, we've put forward a major Canada First border security plan and a plan to strengthen our economy. But you know what? The Liberals, they don't want me in there. They don't. Why? Because their party is a disaster. Their party is an abject disaster, and they're putting their...
Okay, Michelle, this isn't... I don't think we're going to have much from this video here. We're going to go over what people are talking about in the chat here about the Trump Gaza
stuff. The U.S.
stuff.
will take over.
So this is a clip from the Global News, released this morning, but I guess this happened yesterday. I know nothing about it.
For the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it.
Gazans condemned U.S. President Donald Trump's vow to take over Gaza and rejected plans for their displacement on Wednesday. Okay, this is not what I want to watch at all. This is not the raw clip. I think this...
Okay, and from Trump's tariff threats, we now want to tackle the U.S. president's latest stunning proposal on the Middle East and specifically the future of Gaza. It has shocked longtime foreign policy observers, even some Trump loyalists. Trump is saying that the U.S. should take control over Gaza and that Palestinians should leave.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it. And I don't want to be cute. I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad. This could be so magnificent.
Trump said he wouldn't rule out sending U.S. troops into Gaza as part of a takeover, but he is giving few details on what his takeover proposal would look like, including where more than 2 million people in Gaza would go. So now let's go live to Jerusalem and
see. So this is not it either. I want to see Trump's statement. Trump on Gaza statement. Okay, C-SPAN, here we go.
I also strongly believe that the Gaza Strip, which has been a symbol of death and destruction for so many decades and so bad for the people anywhere near it, and especially those who live there, and frankly, who's been really very unlucky. It's been very unlucky. It's been an unlucky place for a long time. Being in its presence just has not been good. And it should not go through a process of rebuilding and occupation by the same people that have really...
Yeah, we'll get back to the Canadian stuff, guys. We're just pausing for a sec because a lot of viewers are talking about this. So we're just going to delve into this for a moment. Then we'll get back to the Canadian stuff.
Really stood there and fought for it and lived there and died there and lived a miserable existence there. Instead, we should go to other countries of interest with humanitarian hearts, and there are many of them that want to do this, and build various domains that will ultimately be occupied by the 1.8 million Palestinians living in Gaza, ending the death and destruction and, frankly, bad luck. This can be paid for by neighboring countries of great wealth It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 12. It could be numerous sites, or it could be one large site. But the people will be able to live in comfort and peace, and we'll make sure something really spectacular is done. They're going to have peace. They're not going to be shot at and killed and destroyed like this civilization of wonderful people has had to endure. The only reason the Palestinians want to go back to Gaza is they have no alternative. It's right now a demolition site. This is just a demolition site. Virtually every building is down. They're living under fallen concrete that's very dangerous and very precarious. They instead can occupy all of a beautiful area with homes and safety, and they can live out their lives in peace and harmony instead of having to go back and do it again. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job. Do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years. I'm hopeful that this ceasefire could be the beginning of a larger and more enduring peace that will end the bloodshed and killing once and for all. With the same goal in mind, my administration has been moving quickly to restore trust in the
Dude, if Trump's like playing chess, he's like making up his own rules at times.
alliance and rebuild American strength throughout the region. And we've really done that. We're a respected nation again.
Okay, so that's what the stuff he was saying about Gaza yesterday. We'll get away from that. Yeah, this is like, honestly, right now in America, it's so crazy. I'm just like, oh, let's just look at Canada. Let's just focus on Canada. Seems a little less crazy at times. I'm not going to lie. Just give me a sec here, guys. I'm going to throw something on. Yeah, like, what do you guys think of all that, though? Like, this whole thing, like, do you think he's calling for ethnic cleansing, as some people are saying? Everyone is crying that America is picking on us. Well, what happens when you give away all your defenses and let your guard down? Trudeau has been invincible until now. Trump is forcing accountability. Great Dominion Trump promised not to get USA involved in any foreign conflicts. I expect this will be a deal breaker for many Trump. That's actually a good point. Yeah. I don't even know, though, because this is like, most Christians are in full support of aiding Israel. Like, Israel's a very religious place to all Jews and Christians, right? Like my parents are Christian, and they look at, Jerusalem and all these places within Israel as like very, I don't know what I'm looking for, but like, it was the promised land, right? That's what Israel is, from what I understand, right? Like, that's like, maybe I'm wrong about it, but I think he might get more support for this move than most if he was to get involved in other things. That's all I'm saying. Because there is a huge, it's a very religious area, so to speak. All right, give me a sec here, guys. Maybe throwing something else on. Just going through. There was something on CTV I was going to play for you guys. An interview, a couple interviews. Yeah, so we got, this is one I wanted to play. Before the Polyev announcement came on, there was some stuff I wanted to go over. We're going to go over that now.
In the middle of this crisis, have the Liberal Party powers put themselves ahead of Canadians? They're in the middle of a Liberal Party power struggle. Again, concerned about themselves, their own self-interest, rather than immediately recalling Parliament so that we can pass a Canada First plan.
Opposition leaders want the urgent return of Parliament, arguing the House of Commons should be debating Canada's response to the Trump administration. But the House is currently prorogued until the end of March, after the election of the next Liberal leader, who will become Justin Trudeau's replacement, both at the helm of the party and as Prime Minister. Here's frontrunners Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney on Canada's response so far.
The Prime Minister has been great, and I have to tell you, the whole country is rallying behind.
Well, the Prime Minister has been great. So she's not just like Justin at all, guys.
Him. We all feel personally hurt, and that hurt is now becoming anger.
Would you recall Parliament?
Oh, the Vassy interview with Wilkinson? Yeah, no, that's on my list.
If you win, in order to handle this?
Well, look, don't make a decision before you have to, and progress is being made. You will have, of course, and I will watch on CTV to get the outcome of the Prime Minister's call with the President, and we'll see what progress is made both in that and then in subsequent, and then decision will be made.
Let's bring back the front bench to talk about Trump's
okay.
impact.
Sorry, wrong video, guys. Not front bench. We don't want front bench. We don't want just a liberal analyst panel. All right. Oh, it looks like it's next, guys. Here's the Wilkinson interview.
With Mexico, as you know, and with Canada. But they've agreed to be very, very strong on the border, stronger than they ever were by far, by a factor of about 30. And in addition to that, as you can see, we've been strong because we've had numbers like you've never seen before. I mean, the border is now closed, really closed. And with that being said, we're letting good people come through, and we want good people to come into our country. But the border is closed.
Donald Trump there on his decision to give Canada and Mexico a 30-day extension to meet his so-called border security demands, delaying the imposition of tariffs, which would have seen the U.S. slap 25% import tariffs on almost everything Canada sells to our southern neighbor, except energy like oil, gas, and electricity, which was granted a reduced tariff rate of 10%. Notably, though, Trump's tariff order has not been canceled, only paused. Jonathan Wilkinson is the federal energy minister. He's in Washington, D.C. Hi, Minister. Good to have you back on the show. Thanks for making the time.
Not at all. Thanks for having me.
I wanted to start off and ask you, based on the conversations you're having in Washington, what your impression is. Is this ultimately, do you think, about the border, or is it about something else?
I do think that the first round of this was about the border, and obviously both Mexico and Canada managed to come to a satisfactory outcome with the president. But I don't think it's just about the border. I think there are some other things that that the president is interested in. Certainly, one of the things you hear about down here is the whole issue of the trade balance. And there's some important things that Canada needs to make sure are understood down here in terms of the trade balance, where, overall, Canada actually has a trade surplus with the U.S. But if you actually split out energy, manufactured goods and those kinds of things, the Americans have a huge trade surplus with us. And the resources that they get from us are resources they need that are actually cost effective and help their economy to go. So it's an important conversation.
Is that point that you're making, and not only that, I mean, the president says it's $100 to $200 billion. It's not. It's a quarter of the top figure there at best, and it's also, as you say, if you take out oil and gas, non-existent. Is any of that resonating?
I think it is, but you've got to actually walk through it and give some examples. I often say to folks right now, the Trans Mountain Pipeline is shipping significant amounts of oil to California. About half of it goes to California, half of it goes to Asia. One way to reduce the trade deficit would be for us to tell Trans Mountain to ship it only to Asia. But that really wouldn't serve the interests of the United States. It would reduce the trade deficit. But California would need to find other sources for the oil that it needs. So I think those kinds of conversations help to bring it home. The other part of the conversation that I'm having here is, rather than talking about, how we actually hurt each other, there are enormous opportunities for collaboration that can help President Trump achieve some of the goals that he campaigned on, but also will be good for Canada, like working together on critical minerals. So I think that resonates here.
Do you think that's a good idea to pursue, given the way in which Canada has been treated, particularly in recent weeks by this president? Like, is this a relationship we can trust and we want to further integrate ourselves with?
Well, I think, look, we need to find a pathway through which we restabilize the relationship. I think Canadians were angry and hurt by the behavior of the country that has always been perceived to be our closest friend and ally.
I think we're more hurt by the actions of our Prime Minister proroguing Parliament during a huge national crisis out of preserving his own career and self-interest in his party, right? Like, we're literally not getting anything done right now. We're barely any. Like, we're so lucky that this thing ended up getting a pause because we are just caught with our pants down. Like, it's just ridiculous.
I can tell you I felt that myself quite personally. But we do need to find a pathway through which we get to a more constructive place. We live beside the United States, and we are going to have actually have an ongoing relationship. I think in some of these areas, there is a pathway for us to do that. That doesn't mean that we don't also be needing to think about how do we build more diversity into our ability to export. That's thinking about debottlenecking the railways and the ports. It's about the LNG facilities that are being built on the West Coast to be able to ship gas. It's about Trans Mountain, and it's about a bunch of other things. And we're going to have to reflect on those things coming out of this. But that doesn't mean we don't need a productive relationship with the U.S.
Why did it take a crisis of this magnitude to get you and your cabinet colleagues talking like that about reflecting on the need to further expand our capacity to hit other markets?
Well, look, I mean, we have been expanding our capacity to hit other markets. Our country actually is perhaps the only G7 country that has free trade agreements with virtually all of the other advanced economies. But I would say that it's a bit unfair, I think, sometimes for folks to say things like that. The first free trade agreement was signed in 1988 by Prime Minister Mulroney, and we've gone through decades of periods of time where there was a political consensus in Canada that working with the United States was a good idea because they were a reliable and trusted partner. We're now dealing with a president that obviously behaves differently than the presidents that came before him, and it behooves us all to reflect on what we need to do to ensure that we actually are not as vulnerable as perhaps we have found ourselves to be. But my goodness, I mean, this president is very different from every president that came before, and the partnership has been a strong and a useful one for Canada.
And I certainly understand that point, and I think that's true of a lot of Canadians, right? That we sort of relied and thought that would be a stable relationship for a long time. But your government isn't supposed to be just the rest of us living our daily lives. You're supposed to be thinking about the future. And with great respect, like, I've interviewed you a number.
That's a great, that's awesome. Thank you.
Of times. I don't think anyone would describe you as a champion for building infrastructure to get our product to other markets. Even TMX, the one thing your government spent a ton of money on.
You can see his face. His face is just tightening up.
Did invest to do exactly that. Barely a peep when it opened up. It was difficult to get an interview with anyone to publicize that fact. I think of LNG, for example, and the interviews we've done on that. A quote from you just a number of months ago: the government is opposed to using government money to fund inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. We're the first country in the world to actually do that. We are not interested in investing in LNG facilities. Now it appears that you and your government have had a big change of heart. Why should Canadians trust that? Are you actually genuine about it?
With due respect, Vashti, a number of the things you said there are actually just not true. Certainly,
You're just a liar, Vashti. That's what he said. That's your way out of this. That's your way out of this, Jonathan.
Champion the Trans Mountain Pipeline, and it actually does exit just adjacent to my riding. So it was certainly something that I worked very hard to explain to British Columbians. In terms of LNG, I mean, we have been supportive of LNG. The LNG Canada 1 is going to be starting up very soon. Wood fiber is being built. Cedar is very close to moving ahead. We are having active conversations on LNG Canada 2. Those all have been important things. That doesn't mean that in the context of building fossil fuel infrastructure, you get to conveniently forget about climate. You have to do this in a manner that is consistent with Canada doing its part with respect to climate change. At the end of the day, climate doesn't just magically go away. You have to do these things together. And I have been very long a champion for doing that. And I think if you ask folks in the oil and gas sector, they would tell you that.
But you're framing it as someone who's asking you about what your government's position is on getting extra capacity to other markets. You're a climate change denier. I don't think that entered into my question at all. I don't know if people across this country, I certainly have never interviewed anyone out of Alberta or Saskatchewan who has the view that your government was a champion of projects like that. TMX, sure, but there's a whole bunch of other ones. I just read a direct quote to you in which you told me there's no way that there's going to be government investment in phase. That was a question about phase 2.
Yeah, but Vashti, let's
be new subscriber, Norman. Thanks for subscribing, buddy. Appreciate your support.
clear here. I mean, governments typically are not investors in projects. That is the private sector. But governments can facilitate through the work that they do with respect to regulatory and permitting issues and everything else. And this government, and certainly I, have been very strong advocating for the simplification of regulatory and permitting issues, the work with the provinces to try to better align those things so that these projects can get built expeditiously. But we are not a state-run company, country. Actually, the federal government doesn't actually take control.
That wasn't about taking
of
control.
Investments with respect to various production.
It was about
facilities.
incentivizing
And Trans Mountain was a
electrification.
very specific case. It was a very specific case because of the political risks that were put into play by Premier Horgan.
But this wasn't a question about whether or not you're going to fund an LNG facility. I take your point on that, most definitely.
Right.
It was a question about whether you would incentivize.
That's what you
what
said was an investment.
Yes, because I had asked you if you would provide any incentives for that phase to be electrified, so that it would mitigate the emissions.
No. You asked about an investment in the facility. We certainly have been working actively on the North Coast transmission line, which could be actually a way to electrify LNG Canada too, but also to actually open up a whole range of other things, including critical minerals mines. That's been ongoing, and that discussion's been ongoing for some time.
So you'd be willing, for example, for the government to play a role in electrification?
Yes, and we've said that, and we're actually working with the government of British Columbia on that right now.
And so what does that mean for the future of projects like that? And is there any discernment between, in your view, the way that you would have positioned the government 2 years ago, for example, on things like this, and now, vis-a-vis Donald Trump?
Well, I would say that there is greater emphasis on trying to ensure that there is diversity on a go-forward basis, because our American friends have not been very friendly lately. And while we may get through these tariffs, I think they have fundamentally affected the psychology of Canadians in terms of the level of trust that we are going to have that they are always going to be there as our friends and our allies in the context of these kinds of trading relationships. So I do think that we are going to have to sit down, and we already are. The Prime Minister is already talking to the premiers about this. It's going to have to involve the provincial and territorial governments. But looking at strategic projects that we may need on a go-forward basis. And that's not just about oil and gas. That's also about the railways and being able to export more products through the ports. That's about the Port of Prince Rupert. That's about moving forward with RBT2 in Vancouver. That's about finding ways to debottleneck ports on the East Coast.
Do you think that there is a way, separate and apart from that, for Canada to avoid the application of these tariffs beyond 30 days?
I do. Well, I think there is. I mean, at the end of the day, I can't obviously speak for the president nor get inside his head. But I do think that Canada has a very good case to make. At the end of the day, I don't think the president has an interest in hurting Americans. And the imposition of these tariffs, yes, it will hurt Canada and it will hurt Canadians, but it will also hurt American consumers. You will have higher prices for automobiles. You have higher gasoline prices. You have higher food prices because of potash. You will have higher electricity prices because of uranium and the hydroelectricity that goes from a number of parts of Canada. So at the end of the day, I have confidence that the president is not going to look to hurt American consumers. But I also think that some of the areas, especially vis-a-vis China and some of the exposure to critical minerals, is a carrot that we can use to be able to actually incent more constructive and positive behaviors that are win-win rather than lose-lose.
Okay, on that note, I'll leave it. Minister, a pleasure as always. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, so I'm going to take a quick coffee break, guys, and then we will be right back. Be right back. All right, we're back. Sorry about that, guys. Took a little longer than I wanted to. Wrong screen here. We're going to go right into this. So Karina Gould going on CP24 breakfast television show. They've had Polyev on before. They've had quite a few conservatives on. So I honestly am surprised to see Karina Gould on here, but we're going to watch it. So it's like a 5-minute clip here. She also went on CBC's The Current. I think we'll play it tomorrow. We can't really, it's brand new. It's kind of a podcast episode. So I don't want to play it right off the bat. It's CBC's podcast, but we'll play it tomorrow after they've had 24 hours. But anyways, Joe, good morning, by the way, buddy. Nice to see you back.
News in another race that we're following closely, this one to replace Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as the leader also of the Liberal Party. But despite the majority of support from Liberal caucus for, it seems, Mark Carney.
Oh, Saul's joining in, guys. What's up?
Yeah, I was here. I ran to the bathroom before you got back.
Oh, okay. No worries. No worries. Yeah, sorry. I went and just made a cup of coffee and stuff. But
yeah.
Anyways,
I'm setting my camera
back into it. Yeah, no worries.
Christian Freeland, Karina Gould is looking to be potentially the dark horse in a race that she hopes will unify federal Liberals. Karina Gould, welcome to CP24 Breakfast this morning. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's talk about your party. Indeed, it's lagging pretty significantly in the polls recently. What do you see as the biggest issue facing the Liberal Party of Canada right now?
Well, look, if we're being honest, I think one of the reasons why we're lagging in the polls is because Canadians have lost trust in us as a government. And that's something that can happen after 9 years in government, but it's also because they want to feel heard and they want us to be focused on the issues that matter to them. And so I think for us, what we have to do is we have to re-earn that trust by listening to Canadians and focusing on what matters. And for me, that's really affordability. I mean, people are struggling to make ends meet. They've been telling us as a government for a couple of years that they need help with this. And so my big push is that we have to do things to make life more affordable for Canadians.
Some of that trust also seems tied to the outgoing leader, Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister and leader of the party here. You've been part of that government since day one in 2015. How will you try to separate yourself from Justin Trudeau while also appealing to Liberals who either do like Justin Trudeau or are happy to see him leaving?
Well, so I think it's also about what we've been able to accomplish. And, you know, I'm very proud of a lot of what we have done. I was responsible for negotiating the child care agreement, for example, here in Ontario, which has saved.
You know, I don't understand what's going on. Did she really think she has a chance of winning this leadership race? Because I really don't think she does. I think it's definitely Mark Carney or maybe Freeland. But Freeland also went on and was praising Trudeau recently. So I don't know how that's going to go with her rallying some more support. Whereas it seems like, you know, Carney's been able to kind of not really remove himself from Trudeau, but like a bit better, I feel like, than Chrystia Freeland
More
has.
than she has, for sure. Yeah.
Thousands of dollars.
I also think that there's a lot of people will run and then they'll drop out as soon as they don't think it's viable anymore, right? It's worth everybody throwing the hat in the ring just in case, like, what if they ran Mark Carney and he just didn't have the sauce, like, and nobody liked him, and it'd be good to have backups in that case, just in case he doesn't end up being the most popular candidate, right? I mean, even if we know that now, but she announced before we really saw any of that, right?
Yeah.
Households across this province and across the country.
Is Karina Gould part of the WEF? I've never heard any of that. I don't think it matters. Honestly, like you know, everyone's saying what they want, but Trump's seems to have welcomed the
Pretty
WEF
cozy with them
with
too,
open
yeah.
arms. So yeah, and now and someone brought up the fact that he's getting involved in foreign affairs now. So something he said he wasn't going to do.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he's the peace
Proud of
president.
things like the Canada Child Benefit, and I'm proud of what we've done on fighting climate change, but there's more that we need to do. So when I think about, for example, here in Toronto and in the GTA, you know, we didn't act fast enough when it came to public safety, when it came to things like auto theft, when it came to things like the rise in crime, and we need to do more in that space. Also, when it comes to when Canadians were saying at the end of the pandemic that they were suffering with inflation, we eventually got there, but it took us too long. And so I think it's about recognizing where we went wrong, the mistakes that we made, and acknowledging that that's okay that we did that. And what I bring to the table is I'm not too proud to say we've made mistakes. I'm listening to you, and here's how I'm going to be different moving into the future in a way that is beneficial for Canadians.
You've mentioned a couple of times.
Her whole motive this whole time has been like, I disagreed with Justin the whole time, but I just did what he said because he was my boss. Basically, is what she's been selling. It's just like that doesn't resonate very well with people. Like, oh, that just means you're going to do what you're told over putting the people first. So you thought it was a bad idea, but you paraded it around anyways because your boss told you to. You were just following orders. But see, I have a problem with that type of attitude. I have a problem with that mentality because it's just like at the same time you should have
To an extent, yeah.
Like, you know, carrying out the orders is one thing, but to like defend it as much as she did was another. You know what I mean? And then say I didn't agree with it the whole time. It's like, sorry, you're just lying to us for months on end. Basically, you're saying. It's just like,
well, she's working with his government. I mean, I can make a good faith argument in the sense that, like, I wouldn't say Poilievre is responsible for holding Stephen Harper to every single decision he made that he disagreed with, right? But I mean, because Karina was so close to Trudeau's administration, I think it makes it a little hard for her to
it's
distance
also
herself from him.
The way she's selling it is like, if you disagreed, you should have been like, look, we're doing this. It's what we're, you know, your attitude would have been different, right? Like, she didn't have a reluctant attitude with it all. Like, to me, it just means that she's not going to work on what she thinks is best for the people.
Well, yeah, I just think it's going to be impossible to spin it that way. And I think that Mark Carney is really the only one who has like
like the party above the people. Sorry, I gotta say.
Yeah. And I just mean that for Carney, I feel like at the very least he can do that. I mean, he did. That's what he said, right? Is that I did give him advice and he didn't always listen to that advice, right? And it's hard to say that like Carney was the puppeteer behind Trudeau
in a way,
the whole
like
time.
He never listened. Like it was like just he put him there.
I
as
doubt
a status,
he did.
I think.
Yeah,
it's possible he put him there just to say.
And ironically, I think
staff. Like he's the governor of the Bank of England, the first foreigner in 332. You know, it's just like this. Like it sounds great. He had dinner with the Pope. You know,
yeah.
Like,
well, and think about. I mean, even yesterday on stream, we were talking about how everything Trudeau does, even when we talk about with the parity cabinet, right? Having half female, half male, everything he does is performative. And I don't know if he actually has any of these beliefs in it, like sincerely, or if he's just pandering to people, right? And I think that the same thing with Carney. I mean, you could make that argument, yeah, that he only had him there because he thought it looked good.
Yeah. Anyways.
Times alluded to sort of affordability issues facing Canadians right now. One thing that distinguishes you from, for example, Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland is that you have said you're not going to scrap the consumer-facing carbon tax right now. That is something that a lot of people have said that's part of the affordability issue here. Why have you said you won't do that, and don't you think that seems essential to sort of move on for the Liberal Party?
Well, I think we have to be honest with Canadians. I mean, just because Pierre Poilievre says something doesn't mean it's true, and in fact, it's often not.
But Carney and Freeland also have said the same thing.
But I mean, I'm going to be honest with Canadians. When we talk about the price on pollution, that's, you know, responsible for a big chunk of our emissions reduction. I hear Canadians when they say now is not the time to increase the price, and that's why I said I'm going to cancel the increase as of April 1st. But until we have a plan to replace that 10 to 15% of our emissions reductions, I don't think it's a responsible thing for us to do. And remember, here in Ontario and other provinces, people also get the carbon rebate. So for people here in our community, that's up to $1,200 a year that they get in return from the federal government. And so until you actually have a plan to replace that, I think we have to have an honest conversation with Canadians about what our climate policies look like, what our affordability policies look like. But I'm not just going to get rid of something because Pierre Poilievre has, you know, basically told mistruths to Canadians about it. And what I bring to the table is an honest conversation and to be transparent about it. And what I would say is that while, you know, we can absolutely and we should increase the industrial
pause
price.
for 1 sec, sorry.
Yeah.
I remember before you were mentioning the Canada-U.S. jacket, making her sound like out of touch. I think this is a really out of touch argument. The idea that there's poor people out there who are
my argument that the $2,000 jacket is a little, you know, makes it you a little bit.
Well, no, I'm not agreeing with your argument.
Not a woman or person of the people.
I'm saying that this, in my mind, informs that more. The fact that she's acting like people who are poor are counting on this $1,200 rebate check at the end of the year. Like nobody who's struggling thinks like that, right? They're not thinking,
what the hell? How
I can
far
finally
is that
get this
$1,200 in a year? You know what I mean? Over a year?
Well,
It's
I mean,
like,
realistically,
it's like $100 average a month, right? Like that's like
if you're somebody who looks at your money as if it's like ups and downs, like you're looking at your money as in ins and outs, then that's a good thing. You do think about that. You're like, oh, at the end of the year, I get this money back. I'm getting taxed on this, but ultimately I get this back into my account before I'm ever going to miss it. But that's only if you're privileged enough to not be counting every dollar at the end of every 2 weeks, right? And people who do, they're not. What the hell does $1,200 at the end of the year do for them, right? So I mean, I don't know. That makes me feel like she's not really.
Well, like almost everybody living in a major city, if they're not above the poverty line, which is incredibly high now, it's like 90K in some cities.
I can make a hot
you're
take here too, and
essentially living a pretty like, paycheck to paycheck lifestyle. Like you don't have much of a choice, I think, in if you're living in the Vancouver area or the Toronto area, like in the major cities in Canada, like you're gonna have
just
a
since
really
everybody's
tough time.
I know everybody's going to agree with me that Karina Gould's out of touch, but I would also say that this is a more out of touch argument than what Krista Freeland said about Disney Plus, because really $12 a month makes no difference to somebody who would be counting on a $1,200 check like this. But $12 a month, if you're actually poor, it's like, oh yeah, that does add up every month. That is an extra meal that I could be buying instead of that, right? If I'm not using it to cancel subscription services.
Whatever, dude. It was just such an out of touch argument because it's like Disney Plus is like the cheapest subscription, by the way. It's like $8.99. There's like such cheap plans. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, so I mean,
it's such a stupid argument. The fact that we should talk about, it's just it's so stupid. Like the fact she said that was just so dumb. And I don't know if she thought it memed so hard, but she got memed hard on that. And by the conservatives and online, dude. The fact that she's like, just cancel your Disney Plus. It's just like, okay. Dude, that fixes all my problems, Christia. I just canceled that $12 a month subscription. Now, my problems are they're improving. So it's $12 freaking dollars. You can't even buy rotisserie chicken for $12.
This is a little bit of a This is a little bit of a straw man because I don't think she was saying that it's going to fix all your problems. But I'm just saying
she acted like it. She's like, just cancel your Disney Plus subscription. And like
if you listen to any financial,
so snarky and condescending.
If you listen to any financial advice person, this is literally the first thing they'll say to you. They'll say, you need to look at your money and see where you're leaking.
But it doesn't.
You can cancel right away.
I understand.
Get rid of those things right off the bat. That's the first piece of advice they would give you. So I'm just saying that her argument there, that's more in tune with somebody who's actually had to count their money before than something like this. That's all I was trying to draw I just wanted to, people were liking that I was shitting on Karina Gould, so I had to piss off the chat so they can't completely agree with everything I'm saying. But I really do feel that way. I feel like the Krista Freeland thing, that's not necessarily an out of touch argument to me. This is out of touch.
Dude, you're out of touch for saying she's not out of touch. That's all I'm saying. It's like the idea.
So you don't think so? $12? No, I think if $12 doesn't matter
are
to
we
you,
really having this argument that canceling your Disney Plus was somehow going to be a big. I understand what you're saying. I understand what cut excess spending. I get it. But what people want to hear right now is not that they need to change. They don't want to hear they need to change when the government has brought this economy to where it's at now. Yeah, you can argue we have global problems, world issues. We do. However, our government is doing one of the worst responses in the world to this. We are recovering from COVID way less way slower than every other country.
Off of what I'm saying, though, all I'm trying to say is that if you listen to Dave Ramsey or any of these like financial advice people who used to be on like AM radio all the time, you listen to these guys, first thing they say, cut your credit cards, stop spending on your debt, go through your bank account and find out any monthly charges that you can get rid of them right away. That's the first thing they'll tell you to do.
Yeah. But you don't just go up and when you're making
no one wants to hear that from
$300K a year on just your base salary alone, let alone whatever else you have or passive income or investments you have that you're generating. You are basically living on at least $500,000 a year between you and your husband's income. So think about that. $500,000 a year family, okay? Telling you
I
you should
agree with
cancel
you. You're not
$12.99
You're missing my point.
a month. It's
you're
like
missing my point completely.
Now. Disney Plus, it's so stupid. It's like, how are you in this job? How are you in government? How are you doing this? Like you are retarded. Like, sorry, jeez. I shouldn't have said that, but it's just so ridiculous. Like, it's just like, how is that going to help? How is canceling your Disney Plus going to actually, I understand the principle, but right now I think keeping your Disney Plus is a good thing if you can afford it, but it's not going to make that much of a difference over a month. What? Like, that's like, how much a day
but
in a
if
month
you go
anyways?
through your monthly charges, you're not,
like 40 cents a day.
You're not listening
like 40 cents a day. What?
I understand what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying. I'm just saying that this really is financial advice that somebody would give to somebody who is struggling. This is genuinely the first thing they would say. Okay. So it's not, I agree with you. She's not necessarily struggling. And that $12 a month might not make a huge difference to her. We can look at her bank account and make those judgments on her for that. Sure. But I'm just saying that that's not as out of touch as the Karina Gould thing. So that's all I wanted to say. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I was just trying to trigger the chat.
I think you
wasn't trying to
triggered
get you
me
all
more
riled
than the
up.
chat, honestly.
I know,
think you
I
triggered
did,
me more
yeah.
than the chat. It's just such a stupid comment. I couldn't believe she said
It's just
that.
not her place.
You know, it's not.
It comes off as arrogant, right?
Or like tell them to get rid of their car and stuff. It's just like, no. You know what? Like, fuck off,
Yeah.
Christia. Fuck off. Like, who are you? Like, who are you to say this to us? Like, that's what makes
How
me
long
so
was I
mad.
here before I got... He wasn't like this before, right?
No.
I'm just saying, I'm laughing at me coming in and pissing you off right off the bat.
I'm so frustrated by that. To hear someone say I think they're both just equally on another freaking planet liberal, where somehow we're one of the best economies in the G7. It's just like, no, we're not. We're having a hard time.
That's
We're having
out
a hard
of touch.
time.
That's
At
out
least
of
just
touch. I agree.
acknowledge it. At least Mark Carney, one reason why I think the conservatives are afraid of him is because he's willing to admit there's problems, big problems that need to be fixed.
And he has some credibility there because he wasn't a part of the government, really. He was an advisor who apparently, like, according to him, wasn't being listened to, right? And that's a much better position to be in than,
honestly,
one of Trudeau's cronies.
I just, you know what I mean? Like for me personally, changes I've made when I'm going through financial hardship is I'll stop drinking beer. I'll be like, hey, no beer. I'll be like, first thing to go. Like every time.
Yeah, this is what I mean, though. It's the same thing,
that's,
right?
That's different.
It's a non-essential.
Yeah, but that can add up quite a bit. That can save you like $100 a month,
of course,
right? Like, and yeah, I guess
so
that's what I spend on beer. But like the reality is $12.99 a month. To act like that is gonna fix your problems. That is where the out of touch.
That's not the argument.
But that's
though.
how she sold it. It doesn't matter what the argument is.
Maybe sure. If that's how you took it, I get it. I agree. It's optics, is what it is. It's optically. Apparently this is how it came off to people, right? I'm just saying, retrospectively, I think that's a more in touch argument than the Karina Gold one.
Honestly,
But anyways, let's get back to the video.
She's out of touch with a $2,000 jacket, or $1,875 before tax jacket. So probably like a $2,200 jacket after taxes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's hard for me to think someone like that understands what it's like to live like I have lived, or like most people in Canada live or have lived at some point.
I don't know if she has. I don't know. I know some MPs have. I don't think Karina Gold, this argument right here makes me think that that's definitely not true. She hasn't ever had to counter money.
Yeah. All I'm saying is anyone who comes in and acts like all your financial problems can be solved by canceling your Disney Plus, it's just like, come on. But
oh my God, that's not the argument though. It's count your.
I get what you're
non-essentials.
You're elaborating for her, right? She didn't elaborate herself that much.
Yeah, I agree.
Later,
optically,
after it got memed hard and she got dragged through the mud, then she's like, "Oh, I'm not mean like that." It's like, well, what else? What else did you mean, Christia? What else did you mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just stupid. It's like maybe they should start targeting
Robin in the chat, LOL, Saul, first time ever saying, let's get back to the video. I didn't mean to derail this hard. I'm sorry.
I gotta check my wood stove though, because it's getting a little, I can tell it's getting a little bit too hot over there. I gotta go dim it down a little bit. Two big losers. Can't be as big of a loser as someone who comes in and calls people streaming two big losers. It's like, what do you think it's gonna do, dumbass? Like, get out of here.
On pollution, that's also not going to make up the difference. And where I'm glad Mark Carney has followed my lead on this is, because I announced this over 3 weeks ago, so I'm glad he's getting with the program here, is that we need to do things to help Canadians make the choices that they want to make. So I would bring back and increase the rebate for electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles. I would include gas hybrids in that, because anything we are doing to reduce our emissions is a good thing. And I would bring back the home energy retrofit program. So, we have to, Canadians care about fighting climate. They care about making environmentally friendly choices, but I want to make it more affordable and more possible for them to make those choices.
Okay, just over a month to go in the race. We'll see what happens on March 9th. Karina Gould, appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
All right, next is so
the federal Liberals.
Bit of a touch up on I think it's the next. Oh no, it's not this video here. I got to put on another video because we're going to talk about the Mark Carney did an announcement today. Just 1 second.
I forgot my water upstairs. Give me a sec.
Yeah, no worries. Just 1 second. Get the next video on. There's something. Oh yeah, because we got to watch the Mark Carney statement from recently.
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Got it loaded up. So yeah, we got to watch this, guys, just so we can build the whole thing, and just to say we're left and right here. We're gonna watch this. All right. Mark Carney, everybody, with his third time around logo.
Relationships can change. In recent weeks, the U.S. has called into question.
Okay, great. Their audio is coming through only on one headphone. Give me a sec, guys. If you're wearing your only left earbud, you would not be able to hear this video at all. So we're going to go to a different feed.
Yes.
Same thing there. All right, we're going to a different feed.
Yes.
All right, same thing. Why is it only coming through the right headphone on every feed? Why are they, like, what did they do? It's the original recording? Was like that as well? Okay. One sec, guys.
Well, good morning, everyone.
All right, this one's good. This one's good.
In front of this magnificent... Bonjour tout le monde. Merci beaucoup, Eric. It is a great pleasure for me to be here in front of this magnificent structure and great symbol. Alors qu'on est réunis ici aujourd'hui, ce peuvent changer for Canadians. Recent events have been a wake-up call for Canadians. The world has changed, and we too must change to realize the full promise of our great country.
This was this morning, guys. This is just a couple hours ago.
Since I launched my campaign a few weeks ago, I've heard from people across the country that they too want change. Les gens veulent du changement parce qu'ils sont inquiets. Inquiets du coût de la vie et de la crise du logement. Les Canadiens et les Canadiennes veulent une vie décente et les mêmes chances et celles aux menaces de change with a plan that stands up que commencer. Canadians want change with a plan that stands up for Canada and creates an opportunity for all Canadians. Canadians want change with a new, positive leadership that ends division and builds together. Now, I'm not a politician. I am a pragmatist. And so if I see something that's not working, I will change it. And that's why last week I proposed a new climate policy, eliminating the consumer carbon tax, having large polluters pay Canadians to make climate-smart choices, and helping our countries leapfrog their American competitors in global markets. Canada needs more of this type of change. Change that puts money in people's pockets. Change that makes our companies more competitive. Change that builds the strongest economy in the G7. Now we face a very different world to one we've known all our lives. A world in which Americans have become more our neighbors than our good friends. And it can feel bewildering at first, but if we take control, it will be empowering. And here's how we do that. We need to distinguish between what we can't change, what we can influence, and what we can and must change to build an even better Canada. On doit comprendre ce qu'on ne peut pas changer. On ne peut pas changer le fait qu'il y aura notre système qui nous and that builds clear about our Americans want. But I think we can.
I was howling upstairs listening to you get mad at the audio.
To create a trading system that is consistent with our values and that builds our prosperity. Whether we can influence President Trump is debatable. But I think we can, if we listen to what Americans want and respond in ways that are best for Canada. However, we need to be crystal clear about our bottom lines. This proud country will never be part of the United States in any shape or form.
Hear, hear.
Okay.
You guys got to read between the lines. He's actually talking about us eating bugs right now.
Well, no, I just think it's like
he's going to make us live in those shipping containers.
Like, I don't think any leader is openly advocating for the opposite here.
No dispositrice, effective, focused on outcomes. We can and must change our government to become more effective. Canadians deserve a government that works for them, a government that's focused on outcomes, not spending, a government that spends less and invests more. In the coming weeks, I'll propose a new approach to federal budgeting that will save precious taxpayer dollars while catalyzing the enormous investments that Canada needs to fully realize its promise. We can and must change how much of your hard-earned money you get to keep. Canada needs a middle-class tax cut, and my government will give them one. Young Canadians need a boost to their incomes so they can catch up after being knocked sideways by the pandemic and the housing crisis. Here, too, my government will deliver. And all Canadians deserve more competition in our economy so that they can get the best value for their hard-earned dollar. We can and must change how we build. This is a pivotal time for our economy, a time to build, and my government would catalyze enormous private investment to build millions of new homes for younger Canadians, to make the AI revolution work for all Canadians, and to build a clean energy superpower that will power, literally, our prosperity. But too often,
see, at least the thing is about this is why they're worried about Mark Carney is because he doesn't sound like Trudeau. There's actually some sustenance to his words. Whether or not you agree with it, it's actually not just a verbal word salad diarrhea spill out that Trudeau has been giving for the last 5 years. You know what I mean? So I think this is their only real adversary, I think, in the Liberals. And I think they're right to be like Carney Trudeau Liberal government. That's what they're calling it. Yeah, now, dude. Like they're worried about him. They're worried about him.
They're trying to link them up as much as they can, which is a good move. That's what they should do if they want to make it.
Brings out the best in the Conservatives, and we're able to see them.
Yeah, me too.
Really deliver, and that I think that will end up better as a whole because of it.
Yeah,
we've had
the country needs a strong leader of both major parties. I don't care about the NDP and the PPC, but
we need a strong parliament, right? You know, like a strong parliament.
You
all
want
around.
people that are, for sure.
Jagmeet Singh and Trudeau, whatever the hell this has been for 9 years.
Yeah, those guys are two outdated politicians, in my opinion. I don't think anybody's like that's going to get elected for a long time. They have, like I said, no sustenance, right? Yeah. You want people who can actually back up what they're saying.
Hey, welcome back, Denny.
Regulation and red tape that has stopped or slowed economically critical projects, including ports, mines, and energy infrastructure. We must remove these barriers to spur progress and build.
What did he just say?
Economically critical projects, including ports, mines, and energy infrastructure. We must remove these barriers to spur progress and build for Canadians.
Oh, wow. So he's saying we must remove these restrictions as well now that Poilievre's talking about removing. That's actually kind of this crazy he's liberal talk about.
Yeah,
like that's pretty crazy.
Well, he's thinking about the financial success of the country, right? That's why my major reason for liking this guy.
Have you seen those recent photos that have come out of them like mapping out the carbon output from all the countries in the world using satellite imaging? And apparently Canada is like negative. Like we're like -2.
Yeah,
because we have so much really uninhabited space. So if you average out the whole country, it's really easy for us to maintain net zero, apparently, compared to other countries.
About this, my government will use all.
Well, honestly, if he stole Pierre's ideas, that means they're good ideas, and honestly, I'll be happy to know that these ideas would get implemented regardless of who wins. I still think Pierre's going to win.
Exactly.
It's just I think what we're going to see is Pierre and him going at it in the House of Commons for 4 years, and and I think Pierre's going to win this election. I think
so too, probably.
Absolute worst case scenario, the Conservatives get a minority government. And even then, that seems weird at this point. Like this is like the poll numbers are crazy in one favor, right? Even with Carney stepping to the light, they still haven't really budged much. They changed like 3 points after Trudeau dropped out, but it really didn't change all around when it came to federal voting intentions.
As much as I love the Dole banker talking about financial stuff in the country, like I don't know how this guy is going to play with the like everyday Canadians. I don't know if he's got the sauce for it.
Yeah, as long as we can all get on the same page that we need to harness as much of our natural resources as possible, and that should be the #1 incentive of all Canadians right now is we need to harness this gold mine we're sitting on. You know, I say gold mine metaphorically.
Yeah, and I agree exactly with what you said
actual
too.
Gold mines too, like there are actual gold mines that are You know what I mean?
I want
Like,
good ideas regardless of who they come from. I just want somebody to run the country.
yeah,
just actually do your job, please.
I want our government to get their shit together. That's what I want. I don't care.
Yeah.
And that's what has not happened in so long.
Yeah.
Like since, it's
Powers to protect Canadians and to build in the national interest. The government of Canada has extraordinary powers at its disposal.
Kane brought this up. I'd like to see PP and Carney debate who's really got the chops. Honestly, I think people who are worried about it on the conservative side, like this will bring out, if you believe in your racehorse that you're betting on here, then I think this will bring out the boat. Like this is nothing
bring it
but
on,
good.
right?
Nothing but good can come from it.
Disposal today to respond to a national crisis. And Donald Trump's aggression against Canadian livelihoods and workers constitutes just such a crisis. And since it's a time to build, we can change how builders are rewarded in this country. That's why I will reverse the government's capital gains tax increase, not least in recognition of the vital role that builders play in shaping our country's future and ensuring
remove what? Sorry?
investment, innovation.
The capital gains inclusion tax.
Oh hell yeah, yeah, good. It's the dumbest idea I've ever heard.
It's like it's bad news for conservatives when someone comes along and just reworks back all these incredibly dumb policies of the liberals, right? And like,
hey, whatever, dude. We're getting the clowns out of there, right? Like it's good. You don't want those people in the House of Commons. You should be happy. Not you, but I just mean everybody. You should be happy we're getting the Justin Trudeau's out. I'd take a Mark Carney over a Justin Trudeau any day.
Yeah. At the same time, though, I would prefer at this point. I think a conservative government is what we need because just given the track record,
I know. I
conservatives,
understand.
like I feel like we need that fiscal responsibility. If you look at the track record of Canadian history, some of the worst terms in terms of spending and national debt have always been led by the Liberals. There's been a couple by conservatives,
with the exception of
but in the last
John Chrétien did really well, but besides that,
for sure. But in the last 30, 40 years, most of the time the Liberals leave the country poorer than when they came into office. So Chrétien was the only one to break that, and he wasn't liked by his party. Like he was, it's just kind of funny. So I just think
we're Canadian. Chili con carne, it's full of beans. Texas chili doesn't have beans.
What?
That's like
He's
a CBC
beanless chili. Like what is that?
No, it's all beans. There's no meat. That's what she's saying.
Oh yeah, that's a disappointing burrito. I remember like getting those chimichangas growing up. I'm like, I grabbed the bean and cheese without knowing.
All that's left is the bean and cheese at the end.
It's just so gross.
I know.
It's like soup.
The beef are gone right away.
Anyways.
And growth. Je veux être clair. Avec mon leadership, le gouvernement utiliserait tous ses
Rob's saying you're bonkers, Saul, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I saw.
L'économie. Répondre à Trump.
You want to say anything back?
Choisir comment on
Slides right off my back.
That we have one. We can and must change so that we have one Canadian economy instead of 13. That means we need to harmonize the tangle of rules and regulations at all levels of governments that have meant that Canada, at least the Canadian economy, is less than the sum of its parts. We must break down barriers between provinces so that all Canadians have full access to our resources. Above all, in a divided world, we must rely more on each other because we are always stronger together. We can and must change our major trading partners. Canada and the United States have the most important commercial relationship in the world. And
Here, you can pause for a second. So. I think it's kind of funny, Rob, because I like the reason I like Carney is because I think he's like more common sense, and less ideologically loaded than Poilievre. I think it's hilarious because literally your guys' criticisms of Carney are how I feel about Poilievre. He
actually went to school on a hockey scholarship. Like this is actually a thing. I don't know for sure, but he played hockey for the Harvard team. He was backup goalie apparently for Harvard. And then he was on the Oxford University Ice Hockey Club alongside David Lametti. So it's not like these crazy. I don't know. To me, it's like it's not. I can't find anything with him going on a scholarship per se. But he
needs to talk about that more.
That's it.
Because he doesn't come from like super elite background. He's an elite guy now, But I mean, he got there, right? Like he's got a rags to riches story, much like what's his face does, Polyev.
So he was on a partial scholarship and financial aid. He attended St. Francis Xavier High School before studying at Harvard. Is that a private school? Is a high school in West Edmonton? Nope, just regular high school, public school. It was a Catholic school. Okay, so like my father-in-law went to a school like this. Okay, so it's like an all-boys Catholic school he went to.
But now that U.S. priorities are shifting, we need to change our priorities in ways that work best for Canada. We know we shouldn't put all our eggs in one basket. And so, while we should remain closely integrated with the United States in the auto...
Yeah, like I can't find anything about the scholarships. All I was able to find is that he played in their ice hockey club at Oxford, and he played on the Harvard ice hockey team as a backup goalie.
I don't know anything about the scholarship. All I know is that I don't think he was rich. Yeah, so I think he got in probably on some kind of financial assistance thing.
He said he had partial financial aid. So imagine he had some money. And who knows? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It gets to a point you're a certain
look like
age.
A Catholic boy.
It gets to a point where you're a certain age, regardless of how you're brought up, you could have made a change by that point or by some point. You know what I mean? Like at a certain age, it's kind of everything. Your lack of success is definitely your fault, even regardless if someone else has come up and had an easier time than you have. You get to a certain point where you could have recovered that disadvantage and gotten that success as well, in my opinion.
There's something to be said about having like a stable home and like parents that care about you and stuff like that has a huge effect on how well you're going to do in your life. But I mean, somebody like him, even if he has those, I mean, his parents were like school teachers. I think his dad was a principal.
Professor.
They weren't super well off. No, his dad was a high school principal or like some kind of school
principal. The whole thing with everyone blaming him for England's bankruptcy, I know that's speculative, and that was just some more conservative politicians.
Yeah, that's
like Lisa Trust, who the profile pictures her wearing a MAGA hat. You know what I mean? Like it's just
he's like sticking a wrench inside of the banking machine, just blows it up.
It's like, you know,
he's take that.
Hard
England.
for me. I haven't really. It's hard to pinpoint him as the cause of their financial hardships, especially around the time that he was the governor of the Bank of England between 2013 and 2020. You know what I mean? That was a tough time globally, for sure. I don't know. I have a hard time just completely blaming him for that. But I just don't want to get swept up in emotions, right? I want to try and stick to objective facts mostly. You know what I mean? Like that's what I'm trying to focus on here. So
even people ask me about Carney,
we'll find out.
And I always just say so far I like him. So I haven't seen anything to turn me off.
I'm gonna look more into it while we're watching this.
Yeah.
In the new areas that will drive jobs and competitiveness in this century, we must diversify our trading relationships.
He kind of looks like Joe
We should
Camel.
become the essential trading partners
a little bit
of countries
without the shades, for sure. A shadeless, boring Harvard Joe Camel
that share our values, including the UK, the EU, and leaders in Asia.
Joe Camel, if he never started
We
smoking.
can do so through our leadership in clean energy, in critical minerals, and in the intelligence infrastructure of the AI revolution. We must leverage these strengths for the benefit of Canada and all Canadians. To do so, we have to create supply chains.
So BBC was actually wrote an article about him. We'll just pause this for a sec. We'll go to this BBC article, apparently. We'll just double check this is really BBC. I'm like, really? This is okay. We're going to go with this. Just one sec, guys. So Mark Carney, the unreliable boyfriend who ran UK's central bank. This is by BBC, guys. The former Bank of England boss, Mark Carney, is now running for the Liberal leadership in his native Canada. This
is probably an opinion piece, right?
Yeah.
Just before. Okay, yeah.
Sorry. It's by
Business
Ben
Reporter.
King,
Okay.
Business Reporter.
Okay.
We're going to find out like what his points are for this. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
You know, from what I've seen. The former Bank of England boss, Mark Carney, is now running for Liberal leadership in his native Canada. What does his time in London tell us? Mark Carney was the first non-British person to become governor of the Bank of England in its more than 300-year history when he took the job in 2013. He had previously worked in the investment bank Goldman Sachs and served as the governor of the Bank of Canada, the country's central bank. He took over there in 2008, a few months before the peak of the great financial crisis, and his success that the role paved his way to move to London. He had long-standing connections with the UK, having studied for 2 degrees at Oxford University and married an English woman. In his time at the bank's Threadneedle Street headquarters, he oversaw considerable changes in how the bank worked. At the start of his tenure, the bank assumed responsibility for financial regulation after the abolition of the Financial Services Authority. So, yada. He's credited with modernizing the bank, appearing much more frequently in the media than his predecessor. In 2015, the bank reduced the number of interest rate meetings from 12 to an 8-year and started publishing minutes alongside the announcements of interest rate decisions. Interest rates were anchored at historic lows when he took over, but he introduced a policy of forward guidance where the bank would try to further the support of the economy and encourage lending by pledging not to raise interest rates until unemployment fell below 7%. Okay, let's just skip a little bit ahead here.
Yeah, I'm allergic to facts. That's why I'm the liberal.
He described it as his toughest day on the job. The bank later cut interest rates from 0.5 to 0.25%.
Sorry, I was talking to Genghis in the chat.
Yeah, it's all right. And it started his quantitative easing program to support the economy. His final week in March 2020 saw the start of the acutest phase of the COVID pandemic. The bank cut rates by 0.5% to support the economy, and Mark Carney told the country that the economic shock should be temporary. His time with the bank also gave him plenty of experience dealing with Donald Trump, which would be useful if he becomes Prime Minister of Canada. From 2011 to 2018, he was chair of the Financial Stability Board, which coordinated the regulatory authorities around the world, giving him a key role in the response to the first Trump presidency. Okay, well, they're not really citing any reasons for why they have these opinions. It's just a bunch of stating. I guess it's not really an opinion piece as much. So people, I guess, are holding him for the economic shock that he said should be temporary. I know there was some things about some big banks saying they weren't a fan of him either. So, but anyways, I'll keep looking into it as we watch this.
Tell Isaiah in the chat. I don't know. We'll see who wins. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'd like to see
probably
Carney in a debate because I don't think he's going to be able to hold himself at all. I think he's going to get destroyed by Pierre in this debate if they have one. I imagine they will in the election when it happens. I'm assuming he's going to end up getting party leadership at this point, especially with Chrystia Freeland's recent statement of applauding Trudeau essentially.
Certainty by protecting economically critical infrastructure. And that starts with building and expanding our transportation corridors that connect Canada to global markets from coast to coast to coast. That includes our railways, ports, roads, and bridges, trucking routes, and energy corridors. It will require collaboration and partners with our workers and builders. We want employers to engage early, address issues openly and transparently, and negotiate agreements quickly, ensuring workers and their families are spared unnecessary economic upheaval. But we have to stop holding back our own progress and instead work together to keep Canada moving forward. And finally, we can and must change to make Canada and Canadians more secure. Nous devons améliorer la sécurité des Canadiens et des Canadiens. Avec mon leadership, le gouvernement atteindra 2% du PIB to reach 2% of GDP in defense spending by the end of this decade and pull our full weight in NATO. Nous réaliserons des investissements supplémentaires en protection de notre pour améliorer la détection du trafic, managing crises. The one thing I've learned over the many years of managing crises is that plan beats no plan. Plans create focus, discipline, and the energy that major changes a crisis demands. And make no mistake, we are in a crisis. We can do little.
And this is what I mean, right? Is that he's at least willing to acknowledge people's concerns a little bit here, and I think that's where he puts a huge leg up on Trudeau and the rest of the Liberals, is that they can't anymore. Even if they choose to now, it just makes them seem worse, honestly, in the long run.
To change the external forces that are causing it, but we can act as Canadians. There's a fever gripping America, and while it rages, Canadians will remain resolute and true to our values. While America engages in a war on woke, Canadians will continue to value inclusiveness. While America
this is where he loses me.
shuns the vulnerable, we will
Would I buy a
continue
car
to show
from Carney?
solidarity
Probably not.
with one another. While America attempts to turn back the clock, Canadians will build sustainability for future generations.
I'd rather buy a car from Trudeau
Before
than from this
America's
guy.
Why?
I just feel like Trudeau would be easier to get a good deal from. I don't think this guy looks like he wants a certain amount for his car. He's not going to take any less, you know?
passes, we must seize this moment for Canada. This is the time to change. This is our time to build. This is the time for Canada. Merci beaucoup. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, great Dominion. I don't know, with Ruby Dahlia, those pictures, I'm just like, whoa, what is this?
She looks like she's in the
real,
Trump admin.
Real Housewives
like
of Ottawa.
Straight out of Mar-a-Lago.
Like, jeez, Robin, I can't let that through.
Merci.
And
Merci, thank you.
Merci, and I
We'll
look
now-
forward to taking your questions.
We'll now begin the question period. We'll do one question, one follow-up.
All
Please
right,
name
let's
your
hear him
name
get
and
grilled a
outlet,
little
and
bit
we'll
here,
do
hopefully.
15 minutes. Merci beaucoup. On va maintenant commencer la période de questions. S'il vous plaît, nommez votre nom et votre média. Et nous allons prendre 15 minutes de questions.
All right, let's go.
Merci, bonjour, mon nom c'est Gabriel Nikunana. Mon nom c'est Gabriel Nikunana, journaliste de Radio-Canada.
Bon.
Deux petites questions en français. Appuyez-vous l'idée d'un nouveau pipeline avec l'Est pour...
D'approuve exceptionnel, une partenaire, y compris...
Question, quel plan...
Pardon my quavering.
Thing to say is that...
Specifically out here in Windsor.
Yeah.
Save the job tariff threats from... Pardon my quavering lips. This is Pratyush Dayal from CBC News Windsor. What would you be doing differently or similarly regarding the tariff threats right now, and what would be your action plan to support and to save the jobs in the auto sector, specifically out here in Windsor?
Yeah, very good. Well, the first thing to say is that I very much join others in supporting the government's approach in terms of negotiation. We have one negotiating team with the United States, and foursquare behind that any perspectives I would give in private. Look, I will say, given that, two things. One, it is possible that, and some degree probable, that the broadest negotiations will certainly extend beyond the next few weeks. The uncertainty that's been created by these discussions, I think, increases the need to look at USMCA, or CUSMA as we define it, as we describe it, look at it in its entirety, and reinforce it and build forward going forward so that that's there. So I think negotiations will extend, and I would very much like to be part of those. Irrespective, which is the second part of your question, and it's an important part, irrespective of those negotiations, the first and best thing that we can control is to be masters in our own house, which we are. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous, and it's to build and reinforce the economy here at home. And so some of the measures that I outlined, adjusting in our tax system, both for individuals and for companies, supporting builders with government programs that catalyze it, supporting action by speeding up permitting and other actions. You know, this great bridge, and I pay tribute to the workers that are constructing it, those workers were held back for many, many years by slow progress on permitting and agreement. It was, of course, a cross-border agreement, but I remember even 20 years ago when it was still a concept. And our workers can do enormous things if governments partner with them and then get out of the way and allow them to build. And that's at the heart of what we can do.
You know what I mean?
He's
Like,
really
just,
taken
like,
some of that language,
took
yeah.
Pierre's playbook completely, and just like, let's just, you know, because it's obvious. You know, the
A
funny
little
thing
bit of
is
an
he's saying how
oxymoron.
bad Pierre is. He keeps talking about how bad Pierre is, and he's a career politician. Well, you sure like his ideas, Mark. You sure like a lot of these things that he's been saying for a while, Mark. So, you know what I mean? Like, you're a little late to the party here, bud. Like, I just feel like it's, he should have made himself aware, known before this whole Liberal leadership race if he really wanted a chance at winning. And even then, like I said, the worst case scenario is I think he secures, official opposition. Is that Poilievre gets a minority government, and that's like absolute worst case scenario. I don't think there's anything that can stop Poilievre from becoming prime minister at this point, unless he was found at a ditty party. Like I've been saying.
There's like, if you want to talk crazy things that could happen, like what would happen if like Bernier all of a sudden became buddies with Trump and Trump started telling everybody to vote for him? That could split the vote and ruin it for him. Like stuff like that could happen, right?
I don't think so. I think
just
a lot of people,
it probably won't, but everything's so wild and wacky right now. I don't know what's going to happen.
I don't know. I don't think that would happen personally.
Probably country, irrespective of how well those broader negotiations go.
And Mark, would you bring back the federal EV incentive plan or add more money to the current one?
Yeah, I think, yes. With respect to EV incentives, the climate plan that we announced last week, which focuses on having large polluters pay for climate smart choices, that creates the ability and resources that could provide additional incentives for through federal programs for EV, and certainly my government would be looking at that going forward. Thank you.
Rusty Thompson from AM 800 CKLW.
Rusty.
Windsor Essex is on the front lines of everything that's going on right now with the tariff threats and whatnot. How would you shock-proof an area like this that faces so much turmoil based on the headwinds and which way they're blowing?
Yeah, it's hugely important. I think there's a couple of things to recognize. First, under the current CUSMA agreement, as you know, there is a 10-year window that the agreement, at least legally, and Canadians, when we sign an agreement, we respect the legal aspects of those agreements, so it provides some degree.
Oh, new subscriber, Mary Loves. Thanks for subscribing. Or new follower, sorry. New follower. Thank you for following us, Mary.
Of legal certainty, although that may have to be litigated. I recognize that, Rusty. So I think what we would want to do is to have the discussion starting with particularly the industries in Windsor Essex. In other words, and I'll start with automotives and all the components of the automotive supply chain. After all, the Auto Pact led ultimately to the Free Trade Agreement, led ultimately to NAFTA, led ultimately to CUSMA and the next negotiation. This is one of the great commercial relationships, engineering relationships in the world. It is a huge benefit to both our countries, and we build out from that. So I would look to do that, and do that in a way that works in a more competitive world, and think about the external perimeter consistent with an auto sector that needs to grow for generations. Thank you.
I'm doing good, Mary. I'm having a great day. Oh, I hope everyone else is having a great day, by the way. I don't know if I said that. But yeah, this is, honestly, I want to watch this whole thing, but he is so dry and so milk toast. Like, he reminds me of Biden a little bit, the way he talks. Like, it's just so,
he's a lot
boring.
Younger than Biden.
It's boring. It's boring. It's just boring. It's just like we'll watch.
Policy is boring. Where are the slogans?
Yeah,
come on.
Follow up. Are you concerned though then that any
do
deal
a backflip or something
is going to be solid enough, given that the
you probably win on that alone.
Agreed under Donald Trump's first.
Can you do a backflip, Poilievre?
We're being cheated.
Well, Poilievre could probably do a backflip easily, dude.
Maybe on a trampoline.
That dude's shredded, dude. Like, he's hitting the CrossFit
now he is.
Way harder
that guy was not
Mark Carney here.
He was not shredded a few years ago, though. I don't think he's got the.
Dude, he
Mark Carney doesn't look like he could do a
Superman.
backflip. I was obviously kidding about that, but
what movie?
He does look,
It's like when Spider-Man, in like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, he just becomes a better politician. And he's just like, whoa, I don't need these glasses
Takes
anymore.
his glasses off.
Like, whoa, he's just like ripped all of a sudden, doing backflips in his bedroom. Like, that's definitely what's happening.
In his words, kind of, so to speak.
President Trump did negotiate the greatest trade deal in history. That's his words, not mine. Though I agree with them. I agree with his assessment. And
he got bit by a radioactive beetle.
Many aspects of that agreement that needs to be there. It has two implications for us. One, I do think it reinforces that we need to sit down at the table, understand U.S. concerns, address them where they can, but in a way that works best for Canadians. And we should do that sooner rather than later because this uncertainty has been created. The second thing it absolutely reinforces is we as a country must, first and foremost, build from within, build Canada, build one Canadian market, build broadly across this country. And secondly, it just makes sense to diversify our trading partners. We are one of the great trading nations. We have so much to offer, and particularly in the industries of the future. This is an enormous opportunity for us. There are more like-minded countries around the world that we can build the new architecture of trade and drive jobs that way. So it's, in both respects, a huge opportunity if we seize it.
Hi there, Mark. Lisa Shing with CBC News.
Hi.
And if you're able to also answer in French for my Radio-Canada colleagues, that would be great. So you're committing to hitting the 2% NATO defense spending target by 2030. Why not earlier, for example, 2027?
Wasn't it raised to 5%? Like you're hitting 2% by 2030?
Like the defense minister is hoping to see happen?
OK. Tout d'abord en français. Il faut et sur money wisely and effectively. Said in English, it's not just about setting a target between now and the end of the decade, but it's also spending that money wisely and effectively, and above all, as much as possible, potentially the majority of the increase in that money spent here in Canada as opposed to the United States. And I'll refer back to my earlier reference that 80% of our capital spend in defense is in the U.S., not Canada.
And you say you've been speaking with the ministers about tariffs. What advice are you giving them? Are you giving briefings? What exactly are those conversations like? Well,
I'm, just to be clear, fully support the exceptional work of our Foreign Minister, Melanie Joly, our Finance Minister, Dominic LeBlanc, Public Safety.
You're not. It's over for him. It's over for him. He's endorsing the current Liberal cabinet. Dumbass. Come on, Mark.
Didn't he just say that he was supporting them?
Yeah, look.
What's he supposed to say? These people are idiots. Don't listen to them, Trump. I'm getting those people out of there. Like, I don't know.
Honestly, at this point, you got to be like, they're all dumbasses. I'm coming in, guys. Like, you want to have any chance?
Cleaning the house.
Minister David McGuinty,
Melanie Joe gonna need a
Industry
job.
Minister Francois Philippe Champagne, and all the ministers. There's a huge Team Canada effort going on. They keep me informed kindly. I provide some perspective on that, and particularly with respect to where we go from here, the next phase of potential discussions that are likely to extend beyond the month of February and well into the spring. Thank you.
En français, s'il vous plaît.
En français, j'ai plusieurs discussions avec le ministre d'Innovation. Yeah, it's very good.
Oh, that smile. GG, Mark. GG. This guy's not going to win at all.
Pendant
times.
Just looks like a fun vampire. Like he's going to suck the fun out of anything you're doing with math and just dry, I don't even know. Not even facts. I feel like it'll just be like dry parts of his opinion. Oh, new subscriber, RJ. Thanks for subscribing, buddy. Appreciate your support.
Travel around.
Welcome.
Well, just from Ottawa. So.
Like that smile. Look at this smile. Let's just take a second.
He looks Canadian to me. He looks like a guy who grew up in Alberta. That's what he looks like.
He looks like he's got, I don't know, man. He reminds me of someone we used to know. I don't want to say it in case he watches the stream. I don't want to say who he looks like.
I don't even know.
I don't know. We used to say he had the same kind of smile. It's just like seems so ungenuine at times and forced and just like dorky and I don't know, just out of place. It's just like just like take a second to absorb this smile right here. So he's just not going to be able to.
I can't think of who you're talking about.
I'll tell you after. I don't want to say it.
Okay,
in case he watches it.
Thank you.
Pizza here.
Yeah, it's very good.
As you travel around,
He does
how
look
would
like he
you
could be related to
characterize
Jordan
the reaction
Peterson,
of
Kane.
Canadians to the tariffs.
He's from Edmonton. It's like Jordan Peterson's cousin that he doesn't like. You know, like there's, it's like you guys ever watch Corner Gas and you have Brent's cousin Carl come in. That's like Mark Carney to Jordan Peterson there. You know,
threat to the 51st state annexation talk. And
Jordan Peterson comes over for Thanksgiving, starts talking about Carl Young.
Well, yeah, he just starts doing like, "Yeah, look at this nice watch. I was having dinner with the Pope." Like, you know.
Oh no, I was saying Jordan Peterson shows up at Carney's house.
I guess Jordan. I don't know who do you think's more wealthy, Jordan Peterson or Mark Carney? Like, who do you think has more net worth?
Ooh, I don't know. Jordan Peterson's pretty rich now.
View, not just
probably Carney, but I don't know.
See you later, 2 cents. Thanks for stopping in, buddy.
United States, have things changed permanently?
Well, I would hope it's not permanent, but it has been a very difficult time, I'd say, for Canadians. And I have been traveling around and have had very broad range of conversations with Canadians from coast to coast to coast. And I would characterize the reaction as, I think I mentioned in my remarks, you know, initially one of confusion and bewilderment. Why is this joke that wasn't funny to begin with continually being made? Secondly, anger. I mean, it's insulting. It's an insult. We are.
Yeah, I agree.
We are.
You know what I mean? It's just like that. Hey, that's an insult. Hey, you insulted me. Like, this is what the debate's gonna be. Seeing him and Polyev. Like, it's just like, you know what I mean? It's just not gonna hold up.
He can't get too inflammatory, right? Because he's talking about Trump. He doesn't want to like piss off Trump before he even gets into office.
Fair enough. Fair enough. You don't want to be a Melanie Jolie here.
Apparently, I mean, from what I'm seeing, Mark Carney's worth about $5 million and Jordan Peterson's worth about $8 million, but that could be way off. I have no idea.
Pretty similar, you'd say. Similar, probably.
Yeah, around the same, probably.
Okay.
Proud sovereign country. And now that's moving to resolve. I would say, okay, you've changed. You changed your priorities. We have our own priorities, and we'll move forward. So that resolve allows for continuing, you know, close relationships in certain areas, but it does reinforce, I think, for Canadians, a real enthusiasm and energy to get on with things on our terms, because we don't want to wake up every morning and check X and Truth Social to find out how our country is being affected.
All right, buddy.
We'll wake up.
Condescending attitude there. Like,
you know, I think it is. It should be, dude. That's stupid. We shouldn't be trying to look at stuff like that to get the info. Like, let's see what Trump is saying on his own social media site right now.
So you're saying we shouldn't pay more attention to what these politicians are? So we should what? Just watch CBC? Then
no, I'm saying it's absurd. It's absurd that we have to get all of that information.
Look, no one
on,
should be a headline reader,
social
100%,
media.
But like, I don't think there's anything wrong with getting your interest piqued and causing you to look into something that you found on social media. Like, that's what I think people need to distinguish. And it's
no,
like,
but
there's
it's not a
headline
place to
reading
get it.
and using these apps to find information, right?
Sure, you can. Yeah, sure.
We'll listen to Rusty on the local radio station, right? We'll listen to the CBC, Radio Canada, CTV, Global. Now,
okay, guys, you got to chill out about the Bolsonaro stuff in chat. We're not even. He's not even on screen right now.
Please send in your complaints, but and take things on our terms, and I, you know, that those messages have set in. And I'll say one other thing, which is, the president has his priorities, and I want to commend his focus on fentanyl. It's a crisis in the United States. It's a challenge here in Canada, but the importance of working together on those issues, absolutely respect that, and it's important that we've made progress, and we have to deliver on that progress. But what has been striking, I think, to Canadians is that the attitude that he's expressed in terms of our sovereignty hasn't really been challenged more broadly in the U.S.
And on tariffs too, I mean, does Canada have champions now in the United States, or does
I think there is. Look, I'll make an observation. I'm reasonably familiar with a broad swath of U.S. business leaders in many industries. There's a number of things that this administration is pursuing that those business leaders disagree with fundamentally, but they're not talking about it. And their expectation is that eventually the financial markets will wake up to the very real challenges that these measures are going to cause the U.S. economy. You know, you can't suspend the law of economics. I've seen this movie before in Brexit, where steps are taken. It takes a while for the economic effect to come, but it comes. The impact of tariffs. Tariffs will cause inflation. Inflation will cause higher interest rates. Great linkages between economies can be torn apart with real economic cost. And so my impression is that those business leaders, it's more than my impression, I know that many of them are waiting for the reaction, and that reaction through financial markets will ultimately bring a counter reaction. It's a strategy, it's not leadership, and you know, it's another reason why we're getting on with
drop those ums, buddy.
Thanks.
Merci.
I mean, he's got to work on his public speaking skills here for sure. You can tell he's not very he's
not stuttering.
I feel like
I don't think he's like it's not like he doesn't know what to say. He's just got to work on getting the delivery out better. True, Pierre, honestly, he's improved his public speaking a lot recently. He speaks slower and more carefully now. Like I remember when I was making the shorts of him, it was I'd have to cut out all this dead air because he was like pausing so much between everything he said, right? But it's in order to get the message across clearly and like enunciate everything you're saying, right?
Question?
Bonjour, Monsieur Cornelis. Pierre Chapdelaine, de Wallon, de Radio-Canada.
On va maintenant concentrer initiatives sociales and cutting the programs that have been in English été mis en place.
Here, one sec.
Mais c'est plus une question d'ici à l'avenir. Okay? Merci.
Merci.
I'll say it in English. So the question was, the question was in effect on spending and would we cut any of the programs, would my government cut any of the programs that had been put in place, for example, on dental care, on child care? Absolutely not. We're very proud of those programs. They're necessary. They're helping millions of Canadians. And the point I was making, which I took too long to make perhaps, but the point I was making was that it's about where we go from here looking forward, and more of an emphasis on policies that catalyze business investment. It's a time to build. On peut bâtir l'avenir. Not growing government spending from here forward using technology and other measures to be efficient. Okay?
Thank you. C'est ce qui m'a fait.
All right, that's it, guys. We made it through it. So, you know, I think it's an improvement from Trudeau, Mark Carney, but to me, still, he seems to have a lot of the same ideologies. I won't say policies, but same ideology and same belief, or not same beliefs, but I don't know, the same kind of like.
I don't know. He seems more capitalist minded from what I can see than Trudeau does. I don't think Trudeau knows anything about business or spurring investment. I don't think Trudeau.
Someone tried to tell me the other day,
runaway inflation and stuff. You know, like he doesn't care or know anything about that stuff.
Like someone the other day tried to tell me that Trudeau has had a real job. And I tried to point, and I was just like,
yeah, that's hard.
It's like, even when he was a teacher,
I don't think he's ever had to rely on it.
He wasn't a full day teacher. He taught one class, right? So when you do that in high school, you're basically working like part-time when you teach one class.
Yeah,
you know what
and
I mean? Just like it's not quite the same.
To address the chat a little bit, I'm not trying to say that Poilievre, it's a bad thing that he does the pauses. And to Kane as well, he said, I'd prefer policy over an expert in rhetoric. Yeah, that's true, but I mean, you also need somebody who's able to communicate those policies to the public, right? Because you can be the best policymaker in the world, but if you can't communicate that to the public, you're not going to get elected. It's not going to matter, you know? These things matter at the end of the day a lot. And, you know, I'll always give Poilievre his dues there. He's good. He's a good communicator. I think he's better at that than he necessarily, I don't know, maybe he has people behind him that'll help him make really good policies. I'm not trying to discount that. I'm not like scared of a Poilievre prime ministership. But I definitely think that it matters how you say things just as much as what you're saying. Pierre didn't get the shadow finance minister position with rhetoric. Shadow finance minister. Yeah, I don't know if he's necessarily that. I think that, like we were saying before, I can't really rely on the fact that Trudeau would be listening to everything that his advisors tell him. he's not a very, I don't know, he just comes off as somebody that doesn't really listen to people. Yeah, I mean, Kane, like if I don't, it's not even worth bringing this up in the chat or but like Biden had good fiscal policies. America recovered faster than any other economy in the world after COVID. And Trump got to take the reins immediately after 4 years of that, right? He's going to get to see all of that sowing after the reaping, or the sowing after the reaping. Is that, or no, he's going to get to reap what Joe Biden sowed, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, but I don't even know. Maybe he'll screw it up, because the tariff thing, if he keeps on doing these threats, nobody's going to want to work with him, right? Why do you want to make deals with a country that's constantly threatening to pull out of the deals, even though they signed something saying they were going to be a contributor to? I mean, even the USMCA, Trump doing this tariff thing is breaking that agreement, right? And I don't know. It doesn't bode well for your country when you're unpredictable and bipolar. Stick to flower arranging. I don't know. Is there somebody who's a flower arranger that I don't know? Same rhetoric as Trudeau. Oh, look, the criminal premier of Manitoba. Oh, Wob Canoe. I think Wob Canoe is a good speaker too. And I mean, to this thing, I think that there's a lot of people, and I mean, I'm going to make your favorite comparison right now, Luca, but if you bring up stuff that Trump did 10, 20 years ago, nobody cares. He's a different guy now. His policies have changed. He's a totally different person, you know, that's in the past or whatever. Someone messes up in their past, they change their life, they've shown that they mean it and that they're going to try to be a better person and make a difference. I don't have a problem with that. I don't think we should hold everybody accountable forever for something they did in their 20s. I mean, obviously there's some things they should be held to account for longer, but still, right. I don't know.
Well, anyways, we're going to get to this Daniel Smith on CTV interview. Yeah, so power play. We're going to get right to it.
What's our objective today? Stop the tariffs. What's our objective tomorrow? Stop the tariffs. We're going to be appointing.
This is like dinner time last night. This aired, by the way, guys.
Our first fentanyl czar. The words were chosen carefully. Fentanyl czar, who will serve as the main interlocutor between the Canadian and U.S. governments and will enhance our collaboration in combating fentanyl.
Did you see that meme I sent you?
Public Safety Minister David McGinn.
No.
Where's the police officer from Corner Gas is the new fentanyl czar?
Oh, yeah. Davis. Yeah, like, I got the joke, because yeah, it's just like something. It's a pretty good joke, actually.
There detailing the boosted border security plan that won Canada a 1-month reprieve from the imposition of American tariffs on all Canadian imports. A plan that includes the creation of a new, yet-to-be-filled role of fentanyl czar in a declaration of Mexican cartels as terrorist entities. To get some more reaction to what comes next, Danielle Smith is Alberta's Premier. Hi, Premier Smith. Good to have you back on the show. Thank you very much for making the time.
Hi, Bashi.
In your weekend op-ed, Premier, you stated calm, logical discussion is far more effective than tough guy rhetoric when dealing with a misguided ally. Do you give the federal government any credit for this, 30-day pause? Was standing up to Donald Trump essentially necessary to make some progress?
I think that the arrangement that they came to yesterday, having the fentanyl czar and a cross-border collaboration, declaring Mexican cartels terrorist groups, and committing a number, 10,000 people who would be dedicated to this issue. I think that all satisfied the Americans' concern that we were going to take the fentanyl issue seriously. I think that's what led to a 30-day reprieve. Now it's going to be a matter of making sure that we show some progress on that in order to make sure that it doesn't come back.
Is it your impression then that essentially extending this pause will be predicated on action at the border? And I ask because in one sense, that's what the executive order says. That's what all the communication yesterday said. But in another sense, just hours before the reprieve was announced, the president is going on and on and on about annexing Canada.
I think that there's two conversations we're having with the U.S. administration. One conversation is the tariffs related to fentanyl. And the second conversation is all of the irritations that the administration has with the CUSMA agreement. And I don't think we should intermingle those two. I think we've got to address the fentanyl issue to avoid the 25% tariffs And then the second stage is having an election so we can have a government who can spend 4 years renegotiating the CUSMA. I think if we try to intermingle those two, then we're not going to satisfy the concerns around fentanyl. So I'd like to stay focused on fentanyl, make some progress in the next 30 days, and then hope we can move on to the next stage when we've got a new elected government at the federal level. Is it us as Canadians, though, who are intermixing them, or is it the president himself? Because I would note, for example, his public statement last night on the reprieve concluded with essentially him saying, let's see if we can reach an economic agreement by the end of this, while our statement focused very much on the border. And again, he's the one talking over and over again about the utility of Canada becoming the 51st state. I think it's both. I think that we need to make progress on fentanyl so that we don't end up seeing the 25% tariffs come back. And we need to make progress on the things that are irritating to the Americans, the digital media tax, the banking industry, telecom, supply management. Those keep coming up, but those can only be resolved in the context of a broader renegotiation of the Canada-U.S. Mexico Free Trade Agreement. And that's not scheduled to be done until 2026. So we need an election. We can't have one.
And yeah, I think everyone's on that page, Danielle, is that everyone knows we need an election. We need also to just stop the prorogation. Like, I honestly think we need to figure this out. And a Team Canada approach means every party at the table, not just the Liberal cabinet, right? And that's where I'm frustrated with this. It's like, out of this fear of losing control of their of government, they won't reconvene Parliament, right? Even though probably more than likely Jagmeet Singh will not vote non-confidence if they reconvene today. Like, I highly doubt he would vote non-confidence. He will support the Liberals at every turn until it's convenient for him. And I honestly, I'm starting to get more concerned. We're going to have to wait closer and closer to October to have this election, the longer this crap goes on. Do you have anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, I don't know. If Jagmeet Singh votes in favor of holding, like, not having an election, that'll be, he'll never recover from that. I don't think the party will ever recover from it.
Prime Minister start those discussions, a second Prime Minister carry it a few yards, and then a final Prime Minister negotiated. We'd be much better off solving the issue around fentanyl so that it doesn't come back with high punitive tariffs, and then getting an election so that we can get someone at the table to do the brass tacks negotiation for the next 4 years. There will be an election, though, before those negotiations are supposed to start in earnest. I sure hope so. I mean, as we all know, there is the ability for a new Prime Minister to try to negotiate a new deal with either the Bloc or the NDP to stay in until October. We also know our Constitution allows for an election that could be held as late as October 2026. I think that would be very damaging to the country. I just want to make sure everyone knows my view. Let's get a new leader in place in the Liberals, and let's get to an election right away. If they win, then we know who is at the table for the next 4 years. If it's somebody else, then let's get that resolved. You spoke over the weekend and released a statement when the initial executive order was signed, basically intimating that your lobbying efforts in the United States had led to a better outcome for oil and gas because energy got a 10% tariff instead of the 25% tariff. What do you tell your province's farmers or manufacturers? Were you not advocating for them? I was advocating for everyone. I think we were very successful in making the argument about energy resources. And let's remember that the definition of energy resources is very wide. It's oil, gas, electricity, critical minerals, uranium. So every single province benefited from the recognition that the Americans need that. I think we can make similar arguments on food. I think whether it's cattle or whether it's grains, I think that goes into an American supply chain that adds value added, and it's the exact same argument. I think the same could be made for auto parts. The fact that auto parts go back and forth across the border 6 or 7 times to create a finished car, that's a very strong argument to maintain those supply chains. So it's up to each premier to make those arguments. But I think the fact that we had a breakthrough on energy resources writ large, I think that shows that there is a pathway for us to demonstrate the supportive value that Canada has and why this relationship is so unique and so strong and should stay that way. Is it your intention, though, over the next month to advocate for all those other...
It's a good point, right? It is a very unique relationship. Like, what other countries have a relationship like U.S. and Canada, right? Where we're so integrated. We share such a big, large border that's basically unguarded, like, for the most part. Like, you know, it's a pretty crazy situation that we're in.
Yeah, and I mean, as much as people can say what they want about Trudeau, but he made a good point in that speech where he was saying, like, we fought wars together. We've been, like, side by side for a long time. I think it's a huge betrayal to just try to like throw us under the bus like that. I mean, we're not Trudeau. Trudeau, it doesn't represent, like, at least he shouldn't see us that way, as entirely just a country of Justin Trudeau. And because of his own personal spites against him, he's going to like punish us all. I don't know, sucks.
Areas that you talked about, because I think Canadians have an impression that some premiers are advocating for something, others are advocating for other things. There's somewhat of a federal voice unifying everything, but not really at all the time. Like, could you be blunt with Canadians? Is it your plan over the next 30 days to advocate for a pause writ large, or will you continue to focus solely on energy?
I've never been focused solely on energy. I've always focused on this special trading relationship we have as a reason for Canada as a whole, every province, all products, to be able to go across the border tariff-free. I think our strongest argument is around our energy resources. As you've seen, we've had a breakthrough, and now we just have to work on making sure the Americans understand that entire picture across all tariffs. But I don't want to get distracted on the economic arguments without understanding that we have to address the issue of fentanyl deaths. When I talk to members of the administration, they're very aware that 75,000 Americans a year die of fentanyl. We have a fentanyl overdose problem in Alberta that we've been tackling for 6 years. So let's work together to try to stamp that out for good. And then we can get on to talking about the economic arguments later.
But the issue of fentanyl is not one that happened overnight. And I think we've talked before about not to take away anything from obviously the poisonous supply.
I wonder what did the opioid crisis start? Like, what year did they, like, before it was declared like a national crisis and everything, when did it really start? That's I'm curious. I'm going to look at
it's funny. You were talking about this earlier on the stream, saying how like there was already issues and then fentanyl came around and it just made the issue like 20 times worse. I think it's something kind of similar to how alcoholism was kind of a problem, but then hard liquor made it like a catastrophe.
Apparently it was
that's what led.
So 2010, the leading cause of death in opioids was heroin. And then now
you can't even get heroin anymore. Like,
by
it's not
2014, it was Oxycontin, and then it became fentanyl shortly after that. So I guess people were popping pills, and then going from shooting out to popping pills. Now they're doing, fentanyl, which I guess I don't even know how you do it.
I think it's the introductory to.
Yeah, let's talk about
pills are a lot easier to get into,
about
right?
These drugs. But for sure. I'm just saying, like, it's crazy how basically the entire Trudeau administration, this problem's been there, and it's just getting worse year by year.
And the impact it's had on both Canadians and Americans' lives. But the data from border authorities in the U.S. clearly shows that our border, when it comes to fentanyl, it's a fraction of the seizures that are happening overall at both borders. Were you making those points when you're talking about the border? Because the way that you've communicated around it seems to accept the characterization of the U.S., which is not based in fact.
Well, it's not helpful to tell the Americans, well, we've only provided you a supply that would kill 9.5 million Americans. That's not a persuasive argument.
Okay.
I think we should stop using it. I think we need to understand Canada's problem.
Can you pause this for a sec?
Canada.
What?
The whole thing, like, this is enough fentanyl to kill 9.5 million people or whatever. It's like maybe an average person who's never had any contact with it before.
It's a headline.
I know. That's what I just wanted to say. Yeah, it's like it's not like this was going to supply 95 million people with. It's a lot of people are probably doing more than what would kill.
Yeah, but I guess what they're
right?
trying to do is they're measuring it like a toxic substance, right? That's usually how they measure any toxic substance contamination into like a public area or whatever. That's how they would calculate it. This much enough to do, like, this much chlorine fell off a train enough to kill this many people, right? Like that kind of
people
thing.
Build up a tolerance to this stuff too, right? Like, a lot of overdoses happen when people have stopped for a little while and then they go back to doing the same amount of it they were doing before, and it kills them, right?
I had a big problem with TD Bank acting as a money launderer. They got a $3 billion fine. We've had our casinos.
Well, I don't know if you heard about that. Apparently in America, they're laundering money somehow, TD Bank or some TD Bank officials.
in British
surprise.
Columbia act as money laundering. We have the issue of not actually examining containers when they come in on our ports. We don't examine every car that comes across the border. We have cars being stolen
That's
and stuck
impossible,
with
though.
drugs and sent outside of Montreal ports. We've got packages coming across the border through Amazon that go unchecked. So just because we haven't found it, maybe it's because we don't have the processes in place to be.
And that's a
I
good
listened to a
point.
whole
It's
thing
like,
about this,
when they're trying to
apparently
claim, what?
Oh, sorry. There's just some rule that they had in place from the Obama administration when this type of commerce was really picking up, because they didn't have the personnel to search all of these packages that were coming through. And they had a rule where it's like anything under a certain amount of money just doesn't even get searched. And obviously people are going to exploit that, right? But the other thing that's going to happen is as soon as they start to crack down on this, there's not going to be any more like super cheap clothes off of Shein and buying things off Temu and AliExpress and stuff. Those entire industries are built off of that being a viable way to transport goods, right? And the fact that it's actually cheaper sometimes to buy something all the way in China than it is to buy something here that was made by somebody who's paid properly, right?
Yeah.
Be able to find it. Maybe that's what the Americans are raising. And now we have an opportunity to address that because our people are dying too. And we shouldn't be complacent about that. We should want to work with them in our own interest to be able to stamp out the cartels as well.
Yeah, and I certainly don't think anyone's advocating for complacency. And I think even in, for the benefit of Canadians, which I think something you and other premiers have said, like there's nothing wrong with addressing the fentanyl issue. But and I take your point about not saying, well, only X amount of people are dying, but that takes away completely from the factual basis. Like he wants to punish us in the same way he's punishing Mexico, predicated on some sort of pretext around the border when it doesn't exist in the same way. Why don't you want to make that argument at all?
He wants us to recognize that Canada enjoys a very special relationship with the U.S. that no other country in the world enjoys, and just show the respect of taking seriously the fact that they've got people dying and they want it to stop. That's it. We should stop making excuses, stop saying, yeah, but we're not as bad as the other guys. We should just say, yes, we agree. And we're going to take care of our part of the issue so you don't have to worry about us anymore. So that's all I would say, is that what he's observing is that things are a lot worse than they were last time he was in, that things are going in the wrong direction. We've got to reverse that. So I would say no excuses. Let's just work on that. And then hopefully 30 days from now, we'll have made enough progress that we can move on to some of the other issues.
Yeah, but this is the thing, right? Is like it's this weird political game, right? That everyone can't really, everyone's saying that Trump's playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. It's like, dude, Trump is like, I don't know if Trump knows where the board is at this point. He's got the chess pieces. But just like, dude, like,
yeah, he's holding on to the chess. Yeah, I think you can see this kind of conflict happening here too, where Vashti's asking her, "Hey, why don't you make these? You have Trump's ear. Why don't you make these points to him?" And then Danielle Smith is kind of in a position where she's like, "I have Trump's ear. Why would I say that to him?" Like there's these two conflicting things. It's like, why would I
you can tell she's
ruin
very
this relationship
about her response in this last question?
And
she was very careful at the start of her question there, where she was like, Vasti, like she took her time really well, because she is knowing there's a chance Trump could see this interview, right? And
yeah, and I mean
it's or his team or staff.
It's funny. I feel like Poilievre has been the most adversarial with Trump in his language. Everybody else seems to be like beating around the bush on everything they say. And like that answer that he gave when they asked him, what do you think Trump wants in exchange to remove these tariffs? And he says, you'd have to ask him. Like that's the most pointed answer I've heard anybody give.
Instead of saying, I don't know, he's a big bully. That was a great way to put it. It's like, ask him. Yeah. It's like the reporter. How many genders are there? He just flipped it around.
Yeah, exactly. He did this. Yeah, exactly. Which is it's the best way to handle those questions. Yeah. Yeah.
Presenting facts, though, excuses. Like the way you're describing it is just accept the way President Trump characterizes things and kind of roll over. I'm not sure Canadians would be comfortable with that.
Well, I'm not comfortable with the fact that over 1,000 people per year die in my province from fentanyl. I'm not comfortable with the fact that cartels are operating in my province. I'm not comfortable with the fact that I'm having to shut down super labs and drug houses. I'm not comfortable with that either. And so I'm not going to downplay the serious tragedy and loss of life in my province because of the Mexican cartels and this poisonous drug that has caused the addiction. So I see it a bit differently, I think, from you, Vashti. I think it's just as serious an issue for me in my province as it is for the Americans in their country. and that we've got to crack down on it, and this is our opportunity.
So you don't see any value in, and I'm not saying dismissive, like I'm not saying be dismissive. I don't think Canadians want to be dismissive of the fentanyl crisis, which is a crisis on this side of the border as well. But the idea that President Trump is describing, what comes into the United States as responsible for the numbers that he's put out there, like, again, the facts don't bear that out. Why are you unwilling to concede that?
Well, because we haven't done the analysis yet. Let's examine every package. Let's examine everything, every container coming into our ports. Let's examine every truck coming and going in our country. And then we would be able to say, okay, we feel confident that it's not us. We can't say that right now because our people are dying too. And so the fentanyl's coming from somewhere. The precursor drugs are coming from somewhere. We had a major case that took place in Alberta this week where one of these guys who was busted in 2021 just got 16 years in prison. We've got a couple more cases like that coming. I'm not going to downplay that. That's serious business, and we're doing everything we can.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If you think Vasi is paid propaganda, you're a dumbass. I'm just saying.
To do law enforcement as well as our recovery approach to getting people off drugs, and we've been talking about that as a government for 6 years. So I'm going to show how serious we are and do as much as we can to make sure that our own people are made safe.
Just one question before I let you go on sort of the longer term prospects for escaping these tariffs. Based on your communication, based on the way the last 24, 48 hours unfolded, what do you think the chance of permanently escaping the application of these tariffs is?
Saying she's like working an angle for a good story to make some good content is way different than saying she's a paid propagandist. Like, that's like just ridiculous.
Yeah,
well, I think there's two tariffs. I think the fentanyl tariffs, the 25.
Like, I think she just wants to, I would at worst to say she's trying to drive clicks on these interviews and videos than clip farming at worst.
I think she's doing her job. She's holding their feet to the fire like she's supposed to.
Exactly, right?
What she's literally is literally what you want them to do.
CBC interviews would do to everybody, right? And they don't sometimes.
Yeah,
and they back off a lot sometimes. Like,
and Vashti does this to everybody, right? It's not like she just does it to the Conservatives or just the Liberals or just the NDP. She does it to everybody.
Yeah. That's why I like her personally. She's my favorite mainstream interviewer.
10 tariffs will come back if we do not make serious efforts to reduce the number of deaths that are happening in the U.S. that we're responsible for with fentanyl. So I think we have to make sure that we take that part of it seriously. And then round two is a renegotiation of the Canada-U.S. Mexico trade agreement, which hopefully a new government will get underway.
You'd have to ask my dad,
as soon as we get past this initial crisis. But we have to look at them as two different discussions we're having with the U.S. And it's probably going to be a hard negotiation, but it'll be a lot better to start that negotiation with a government that has a 4-year mandate.
All right, I'll leave it on that note. Premier, I appreciate your time as always. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vashti.
Honestly, that was pretty good interview. I liked it. And yeah, honestly, I don't know. It's just silly to me. People think she's a paid propagandist. It's like, what if
why would she work
true,
for CTV?
If nothing is true, then what do you have left? Like that's what I don't understand.
No,
if nothing is true, then everything is true. People need to realize that. Like, you can't just say everything you disagree with is a paid propagandist, or this person made my team look bad.
If you're going to be a paid propagandist too, what you should do is you should just start like a Tim Pool style channel, or Benny Johnson, or any of these people who've actually been paid by other governments before. They're independent news channels, and they just say the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. They say the talking points that they're being told to talk about. I don't see Vashti doing that. I don't know what her angle is. She doesn't seem to have. I don't even know what her politics are. I can't tell. Like, I don't know. She seems to be upset with everybody when she talks to them.
She seems a little bit woke in some ways, not gonna lie. A couple things she said, a couple questions she's really pressed on, but I can't tell if she's just trying to represent everybody or not. You know what I mean? I can't tell is this what she wants for the viewers, or is this what she actually wants and thinks, right? That's the difference.
I think that she takes her job seriously, and she asks people the questions that the people who are angry with these politicians would want to ask.
If you don't trust CBC, you don't trust CTV, you don't trust Global News, you don't trust CP24, who else?
Yeah, who are you supposed to trust?
Who are you going to for information? Because these politicians don't call independent creators. They call CTV, they call CBC, they call Global, they call CP24, even Pierre's team. Or they call like there's a couple podcast episodes and stuff, sure, that they go and do, but those are few. Like, those aren't very many. But how many liberal MPs have gone on CTV and just been ripped apart? You know what I mean? Like if they're paid propagandists, they're doing a horrible job. Like they're doing a bad job.
Yeah.
Like, they're
Must
trying
not
to
be getting paid very well.
Like it's like when everyone says like it's on Team Klaus Schwab, the WF. I'm like, well, Klaus sucks at hiring then, because they all suck. Like Jagmeet Singh sucks, Trudeau sucks, Mark Carney doesn't have very strong public speaking skills. I don't think he's going to do very well. Chrystia Freeland's kind of just no one really likes her. You know what I mean? Like he just did such a bad job. You know what I mean? Just such a bad job. But I don't know. If you can tell her political loyalties lie, she is doing a good job. Yeah, and that's what I think too. Justice, if they get paid by the government, what else do you call it? It's a definition, not an opinion, dumbass. Well, I just think, honestly, Genghis, out of everything you've said, and then this too, it doesn't surprise me. Because, like, to me, I just disagree with you a lot on a lot of things. Like, I think you're a little too, honestly, sheltered in a way. You just kind of put your head in this space of, like, everything's falling apart. Everything's, you know, it's just like, you guys got to realize for yourself for a second. Like, we have freedom of speech. This show would not exist if we didn't have the freedoms we have. When these conservative MPs are going up and saying C11, C18 is censoring everybody, it's like, it might be censoring people on mainstream news outlets, and what reasons why that CBC interview never aired. I think that's really sus. Like, why did that CBC interview never get aired? The Moose and the Loose did a video about it. I thought that was really cool. I thought that was like, wow, this guy's being a journalist. You know what I mean? By finding this uncovered interview and airing it on his channel. Like, I thought that was bold. I thought it was pretty cool. You know what I mean? I got respect for those guys, but it doesn't mean I think because I automatically all these mainstream guys are just paid propagandists. It's like, we're not living in Nazi Germany here. You know, this is Canada. Like, we're not there yet.
Well, to Luca in the chat, ever stop to ask yourselves why independent media is winning these days? I think that people like to feel like they're getting information that isn't available to the broad public. They've got like a secure line to like the exclusive information that the mainstream is keeping from you and the politicians don't want you to know. And, you know, it's the same reason why you see ads on sites that'll say like, doctors don't want you to know about this one crazy trick. You know, it's like, that's
every
basically
ad on
what,
Rumble. Like,
yeah.
But Blonde Law in the chat said something really good. I just want to repeat this. I'd personally trust HOC debates, Hansard evidence, committee meetings, etc. If I had to get direct news, I'd have to go back and do my research, to be honest. And that's really good. I love that. That's the best way to do it. Is like, watch the raw stuff yourself, separate the opinions from the facts. Like, that's how I like to figure it out. But just to write off whatever someone says or an entire company is saying just because you don't like what they're saying and to call them propagandists, I just think it's like, you're just a hypocrite, because that's what you're accusing the other side of doing, right? Like, it's just,
yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it's the same reason why like communists will tell you, they're like, oh yeah, it's like the Zionists are controlling the media, and like, I mean, there's left and right people who will say that, right? But it's like, it's like this denial of any fact that could back up the people who you disagree with, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm not trying to say that everybody is doing that, but just that you got it. If you don't trust it, just go look yourself. Like, listen to what they're saying. On the surface, I mean, this is valuable information anyway. She's a politician. This is what she's saying to the media. I don't know. I just think I don't think she's trying to make Danielle Smith look bad here.
Yeah. Anyways, that's all the time we have for today, guys. I guess we'll leave it on that note. Yeah, but yeah, I had a great time. It was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for your contributions and everything in the chat. We appreciate you all. Even if I might have called you a dumbass in the stream, I still love you. And, you know, I still appreciate your support. And I'm counting on a dislike on this stream now. But anyways, we had a great time. I hope you all did as well. If you don't like what we're saying, it's because we're speaking our minds, honestly, in my opinion. But
yeah, and I mean, there's a reason you're not like, we're not going to ban you from the chat or anything for pushing back, Angus. Like, we do appreciate that you're here and you're voicing your opinion or whatever. But yeah, you know, you get Justus got a little fiery there. But yeah, I don't know. We're both kind of on the same page on this, where we think that, yeah, we see how hard it is to get information from anywhere besides these places, right? Like, if you want to look at these alternative news sources, just be equally skeptical of them, you know? Apply the same level of standard you would hold the mainstream media to.
Yeah. And I plan on holding Pierre to the same standard. We're holding Trudeau and all these guys too. We have to. Otherwise, we're not doing anyone a favor at all. So, except these politicians. But
we're just saying there's people who get kicked out of the chat, and we appreciate your pushback, I guess, is what.
Yeah,
I was
like if anyone wants to call us dumbasses or anything PG, I don't care. Like, to me, I'm only gonna ban, like, you only get timeouts if you're racist or overly sexual. That's it, really much. Everything else is go ahead. Like, unleash it all. Because we want to, we don't want to censor people just because they're dissenting opinions. That's not really what we're about here. But if you're going to be super weird and sexual, like a comment Rob made earlier about glory holes, I had to delete. I was like, you know what, Rob, we love you, Rob. So we're just going to look over this. We're going to pretend it didn't happen. But anyways, have a good day, guys.
See you guys. Bye.